Learn more at massgeneral.org/cancer. If you don't see race, you're not seeing the full picture. Join a panel of experts as they lead insightful conversations on issues affecting people of color. Watch a new episode of Basic Black tonight at 7:30 on GBH2.
This week on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, taxpayers are gawking at the price tag for Pawtucket's new soccer stadium. Proposals for more offshore wind could bring jobs to New Bedford, and a Biden aide may move back to New Hampshire to run for Congress. It's our regional news roundtable. That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, Sunday night at 6 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
I'm City Hall reporter Soraya Wintersmith, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head in Boston.
Countless lives, the world has largely remained silent. And that must change, and it has to change now.
She blames Sudan's armed forces for aid being blocked and accuses a rival paramilitary force of gang rapes and mass killings. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
Lung cancer is still the deadliest form of that disease. It kills more than 135,000 Americans a year. NPR's Yuki Noguchi reports new treatments are dramatically changing survivability, especially when caught early.
One of the key breakthroughs in lung cancer treatment is the ability to target the specific type of tumor based on its genetic makeup. In addition, new immunotherapies are helping boost the patient's own ability to fight the disease. Robert Wynn is a lung cancer specialist at Virginia Commonwealth University.
This is where science and innovation has impact.
These drugs have helped boost survival rates from the disease by 22% in 5 years. Further improvements in survival from the disease, experts say, is in boosting lung cancer screening rates. Annual screening is recommended for anyone over age 50 who has smoked the equivalent of a pack of cigarettes a day for 20 years. Only 4.5% of those eligible get screened. Yuki Noguchi, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The plans are in place to turn the former Chelsea Soldiers Home into a facility for migrants and homeless families. Globe reports that the shelter is expected to house roughly 100 families and is intended for parents and children or pregnant women who are eligible for the state's emergency shelter program but have been placed on a waiting list. The facility will offer on-site services to migrants, including help finding stable housing, applying for work authorization, and connecting with potential employers. Officials say renovations are being made right now so the shelter can open in a week or two. Boston College's men's hockey team will be in the Division I National Championship game this weekend after beating Michigan 4-0 last night in the Frozen Four, college hockey's version of the Final Four. The win secures a chance for BC to pick up its first national title since 2012 in men's hockey and its sixth overall in the sport. To do that, though, the Eagles will have to get through University of Denver, who they lost to earlier this season. Here is forward Cutter Goche.
Yeah, I said it earlier in the year. Anytime someone commits to Boston Colleges to win championships, and we have an opportunity for that on Saturday. Been super proud of our groups up to this point, and we owe these guys.
BC's neighbor down Comm Ave, Boston University, lost to Denver in overtime last night in the semifinal. It was 2-1, ending the opportunity for one final brawl between the not-so-friendly local rivals. 62 degrees and wet. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Max, with the new HBO original limited series, The Sympathizer. From executive producers Park Chan-wook and Robert Downey Jr., streaming April 14th at 9 p.m. Eastern on Max. Subscription required.
Rowdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live. Thank you. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. We are not going to be at the library on Tuesday because they're going to be cleaning up here after the marathon, but we will be back on Wednesday. We're going to be joined by the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Campbell. She's going to take our questions and yours from 1 to 2. And We have a special BPR on the road, Jim. We're getting out of Dodge. We're going someplace different. We're going to UMass Boston over in Dorchester, the beautiful campus over there on the water. We're going to be there May 3rd, and we're going to be joined by the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey, as well as Gina McCarthy, who used to head up the EPA under Barack Obama. Good morning, Jim.
And we're also there to commemorate the swearing in, which I think is happening of April, or the formal elevation of Marcelo Suarez Orozco as the Chancellor, who's really an impressive guy. We're joined now by Phillip Eng, General Manager of the MBTA. And for those of you who were betting that he wouldn't make it through a year, you lost. This week was his 1-year anniversary. Congratulations, by the way. He's with us until noon, taking our questions and yours. You can call or text Phillip Eng with your question or comment at 877-301-8970. Or if you're here at the library, our colleague Ethan, who is sitting right there. Hello, Ethan. Tell him what you want to ask, and we will try to get you on the show. Phillip Eng, welcome. Great to see you.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Marjorie.
Well, thank you very much for coming in. So we were talking before the show. We're on the finish line of the Boston Marathon right here. The green line is right down the street, several stops going in either direction. So what is the deal with the MBTA on Marathon Monday?
Well, those are the types of events, in addition to daily service, that really excite us. That's what makes Massachusetts such a great place to live, work, and play. And the whole team is really ready. We've done a lot of pre-planning. We have extra service before and after the event on the Green Line, particularly where we will see a lot of ridership. We're running a regular weekday schedule, albeit a holiday, but we're running a weekday schedule on all of our modes. And we're just ready to respond. The new COO has folks ready, should anything occur, that we will be more pre-positioned. Because we know just how important this event is, not only to the runners that are partaking in this event, but to the businesses and just the local economy and just the general atmosphere of enjoying why people want to, again, live, work, and play here.
Copley's closed, correct?
Yes, Copley
What else is closed?
Will be closed for safety reasons. Everything else is open. We wanted to make sure that crowding is controlled, so Copley needs to be closed. But as I said, we'll be able to run extra service. The number 1 bus also will run extra service.
How many riders on a typical Monday, and how many riders do you expect on Marathon Monday?
Well, actually, because Monday is a holiday.
No, I meant a non-holiday. I meant on a normal Monday, how many riders do you have?
I don't have that figure off the top of my head. But we do know that the extra ridership is going to be fulfilling the space that we've created by normal folks taking the day off.
How many extra riders do you expect, roughly?
It's going to be like a heavy peak workday, a little bit more than that, because there's going to be the big crush before and after. But we have enough extra trains to carry that.
Our number is 877-301-8970. If you have a comment or a question for the head of the T.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Copley may be closed, but Arlington stop is 4 blocks down the street. That is going to be open?
That's open, yeah.
So that is, it's a kind of a short walk, I guess, if you want to walk up from.
It's very convenient.
Absolutely.
So, as I said a minute ago, your 1-year anniversary is this week, I think on the 10th. And seriously, congratulations. It's not the easiest job in the world, to say the least. Everything we read, everybody who's had to comment on you, including people who are usually critical of T leadership, was full of praise in the last few days. So forget them. I'm serious. Rate yourself. Rate your own performance, Phillip Eng, 1 year in. How'd you do? What'd you not do as well as you should? What did you do particularly well, do you think?
Well, I like to let others rate what we're doing. At the end of the day, it's how I serve the public. It's how I serve the whole Commonwealth. What I'd like to say, though, is that as a team collectively at the MBTA, the workforce is really engaged. The leadership team that has been created is really moving the needle in the right direction. We've taken steps, and there's successive steps that you could build on, from building the workforce, training the workforce, and empowering them to deliver more work. And in fact, in this last year, the amount of work we've done in our system, well, anecdotally, a lot of people say we haven't done that much work in years. And then you take the other component, how do we interact with the public? We're working on making the environment, not only on our trains being more reliable, on time and better schedules, but how do we make the environment when you're in the station? So as people start to see the track work that we're accomplishing, and we have some exciting work coming up that will eliminate all the restrictions on Blue Line. But the stations will be cleaner, a more welcoming environment, and the whole piece about feeling safe in the system. These are all building on restoring ridership, restoring confidence, public trust, and I think that is why some of the comments that we've had it really is because of the workforce and the whole team that's there.
Okay, let me take another cut at this from another direction. What's the toughest nut you've found to crack in your first year here? On your agenda of things that needed fixing, what's been the most difficult one?
It might be myself because I want to do things quicker, but I also know that you can't do everything overnight. We are focused on, there was so much work to be done in the system. So initially is where do you start? And then ultimately in late of 2023, that's when we decided to go with the diversions for the track improvement program. And that enabled us to give the workforce, the contractors, dedicated time to be able to be most productive, to do the work with higher quality, and actually to do more than just lift restrictions, but do state of good repair at the same time. That's just one phase of it, because the rest then is, for instance, on Blue Line next week, not only are we doing track work from Maverick to Wonderland, we'll be replacing catenary as well, because we've seen power issues. So it really is, how do you build on each of these components, but also tackle the other things? And then looking longer term, we want to make sure that we're not just focused on today, which is important, and we won't lose focus on that. But how do you continue to look to build a system for the future?
It's the voice of Phillip Eng's 1-year anniversary this week. He's with us and you till the noon hour at 877-301-8970.
I'm going to read you a butter up the guest text to start this off on an upbeat note. This is from Kelly in Holbrook. She says, my son was hired by the MBTA in September, part of the new railman and training program. He's grateful for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, the education, support, and camaraderie he's experienced is everything what I wished for, but thought was out of reach. We have first-row seats to see the rise of the MBTA with Mr. Eng. I love Mr. Eng. How about that?
Wait, you said that or he said that?
Kelly in Holbrook said that.
Okay,
so there
fine.
you go. You got a big fan up there in Holbrook.
Well, Kelly and Marjorie just gave me goosebumps. That's the feedback that we need. The workforce knows that we care. We need to demonstrate that we care. Their success is going to be the success of the T and ultimately winning back the public trust. Thank you for sharing that.
Let's
Tom
take some.
in
Good.
Somerville,
Yeah,
you
great.
are on with Phillip Eng, who runs the MBTA. Hi.
Hey, Tom.
Hi. Hi, General Manager Eng. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for answering these questions. I just wanted to call to ask about the T's bus electrification and commuter rail electrification plans. So I really appreciate how you and the T have turned things around since the last administration, but this is one area that has been very consistently going in the wrong direction since the last administration, where we are now less electrified than we were 3 years ago by taking out all of the trolley catenary wires in North Cambridge and replacing those with battery electric buses. And we're now procuring buses that are double the price of trolley buses and will need 6+ hours to charge. So I really am hoping to see some change there where we can go back to the system that was working and actually expand overhead wire. And I'm wondering what your thinking is on that.
Tom, thanks for the question. Appreciate it.
So we are fully invested in trying to decarbonize our system, our infrastructure, but I'm also invested in improving reliability, because the more people I can get out of their cars also decarbonizes our environment. With regards to how we program these different projects and different needs, you'll see in the next capital investment plan, which we just started talking about yesterday at a subcommittee meeting, we'll focus a lot on safety, reliability, and infrastructure, but it also has investments towards decarbonization, battery electric facilities. We will be expecting later this year our first 10 battery buses. We also have a proposal that we're looking at on commuter rail that could use battery electric trains. And these are all the building blocks to how do we get to that finish line. But we also have to make sure that as I look to invest in those types of facilities and equipment, I also need to make sure that I don't ignore the existing infrastructure. So it's a balancing act, but I assure you, as you see the program, as we continue to improve each of these projects, you will start to see that we're moving in that direction.
You know, you got more funding than usual in a proposal from the House, but it's much less than, according to Bruce Moll over at Commonwealth Beacon magazine, it's much less than you need, particularly if you want to have this half-price fare for low-income riders. How do you convince the legislature if this could change, obviously, just propose it. But how do you convince the legislature, especially ones legislators that represent Sturbridge and way out there, far away, that they should vote more money for the MBTA, which their constituents don't usually ride?
Well, part of this is demonstrating that the T and the new leadership team, whatever dollars are invested in the T, will spend it wisely, and we will deliver results. That's something, as we take in a deep dive into the capital program, we really are looking at past practices. How do we improve those practices? How do we have project management in a different way? And how do we partner with industry? We're going to identify things that we know we need to improve, and we will. But the real thing is then when you start to talk about the extremities of the system, and it was the same thing when I was at Long Island Railroad, right? The big focus was New York City Transit because it was Manhattan and it carried so many more riders. But the importance of mass transportation to those other communities is just vital as the hub-aware center of Boston, for instance. What we need to do is look at how do we improve today's service, make it reliable. And the Commuter rail has been over 90% on-time performance, probably close to the 94% on-time performance. The ridership return is the best in the nation for Commuter rail, which is indicative of the ability to deliver better service. But what we're looking to do in the future is how do we improve the frequency even more? And how do we make sure that folks who want to use mass transportation know it's a viable option, and not only a viable, but then become the preferred option?
Let's stay on money just for a second. The legislature and the House did come up with more money than even Governor Healy talked about. But when the low-income fare program was adopted several weeks ago, by the way, one of the last urban areas in America to do it, which I don't quite understand. Maybe you do, even though you've only been here a year. You said that if the legislature didn't fully fund it, you'd find the money. The House did not fully fund it, from what I understand. You've got your own financial problems. Can you 100% guarantee right here that if the legislature doesn't fully fund low-income fares, you will?
Well, low-income fares is a big priority right now, right? We know we need to make transportation not only reliable, it needs to be equitable and affordable for everybody. What we had last year was $5 million in fiscal year 24 to be able to study and develop a program. But what I challenged the team, because it was exciting to see that the governor and the legislature put that seed money in, was to let's get this program and let's put something that is real and implementable. So what they did is they came up with the low-income fare program, which the board unanimously approved. We do have money left in that $5 million that we are using now to develop and enroll people and start getting it. We do know that also in the beginning, it's going to be a ramp-up period. So whatever ends up being in the final budget for the T, we'll have to assess that when I get to the end of that program. What my goal is to not only whatever the budget allows us. I know the T itself has to find efficiencies, and that's one of the other things we're working on. I don't have an answer to that exactly, Jim, but I know that program is important for everybody. We're committed to keep it moving forward with the dollars we have.
So just so I understand, if you can't fully fund it, despite your commitment to the program, what does that mean operationally in terms of low-income fares, if you can't find 100% of the money you need?
Well, I think the thing is I have to work hard to see how we keep a program moving. I'll face that challenge when we get to, and the dollars haven't been finalized yet. At the same time, there are other dollars that are being proposed that could help us offset different needs. I have to balance the safety, reliability, but I know how important low-income fares
But there's no guarantee. I'm not trying to paint you in the corner. I just want to understand because it matters to a lot of people. I know it matters to you. As of the moment, there's no guarantee that the full amount of money is going to be there in this first year. Is that a fair statement?
Right now, the proposal is, I believe, $20 million I saw. The estimate is slightly higher than that. Yeah. But again, it's a period of time where we will be ramping up, so we don't expect to be spending all of those dollars.
Right, but it's going to be $60 million or something in a couple of years, right?
Yes, down the road, and that will be part of how we look at long-term funding for the MBTA.
Randall in Somerville, you're on with Phillip Eng. He's the GM of the T. Welcome, Randall.
Thank you. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm a resident of the Brick Bottom Artist Building in Somerville. Brick Bottom is located at the point where Union Square Spur diverts from the Medford line on the GLX. Our community was seriously impacted during construction, and we continue to have unresolved issues. Our driveway runs along the side of the building was seriously degraded due to prolonged use of heavy equipment. And when the concrete deck that spans Brick Bottom and MBTA property was partially demolished, the remaining structure, which is on our property, was condemned by the city of Somerville. We entered into a memorandum of understanding with the T during the construction to address these issues, but the team's been completely unresponsive since the project was completed. At this point, our emails and calls aren't even being acknowledged. We did everything we could to support the construction of the GLX, including spending over $100,000 of our money to accommodate track work and the sound wall construction.
So, Randall, if I may, what's your question for the general manager?
We would love the T's legal team to respond to the need to be able to mitigate the impacts on our building were.
Got it. How about it?
Yeah, I'll take that back. I'll find out what the status is. And Randall, I assume the legal team has your contact information?
Well, why don't we, Randall, stay on hold, and with your permission,
sure.
General Manager, we'll give you his contact information. Randall, stay on hold. One of our producers will take your contact info, and we'll give it to someone on Mr. Eng's staff. Thank you for raising the issue. 877-301-8970.
Here's a practical question from one of the texters. They want to renew their Charlie cards online. They said that they can't. Is that right?
Well, we're in the process of developing a new automated fare collection program. We want to make it easier for our riders to use. The Charlie card will be available to folks in the transition. We're excited about the automated fare collection. One of the challenges with regards to online and renewing it in the stations, it's just old technology.
They have to come to Boston to do it now, right?
It's old technology, and that's why the automated fare collection is important. The new process will be you don't even need an account. You can use your credit card. You could use your phone. You could use Apple Pay and Google Pay, and you could just tap with the readers.
Wow.
I've been testing this since late last year. We're ready to move forward with a larger test. And we're really excited that hopefully later this year we'll be able to offer that to our riders.
You mean like about by the end of December, something like that?
I'm going to hope for earlier.
Okay, but right now you have to come into Boston. I didn't know that to get a Charlie card.
Well, to purchase it on the machines. Yes.
Okay.
Bobby in Wakefield, you're on with the GM of the T. Welcome.
Hi there. Let me just change.
Oh, we lost him, I think.
Sort of like we called him, you know what I mean? 877-301-8970. Jonathan, you're in Roxbury. You're on with the GM of the T. Welcome.
Hi, General Manager. My question is, why should riders expect that line closures will be more effective this time than under the previous administration?
Well, I think that in the amount of work we've done since late last year, Ashmont-Mattapan, every single one of the diversions that we have had, we've delivered on the results we've committed to. I know that early on when we announced the red line diversions, there was a lot of discussion on why should anyone believe that we could deliver given the orange line in 2022. But every single one of these has resulted in the speed restrictions being lifted, the ability to now perform regular cyclical maintenance in these areas. I believe we're down to somewhere around 113 speed restrictions system-wide. And the green line itself is almost restriction-free. It's not quite there. We have a little more work next year. And we've had over 30 diversions this year, and we've fulfilled all of the commitments we've made in each one of those.
Hey, Jonathan, thanks for the call. There's a terrific piece, speaking of Bruce Moll, who's done a great job, I think, covering transportation through the years at Commonwealth Beacon, about the reset, as it's called, with the subway car manufacturer out there in Springfield, CRRC. And while I have to say it is wildly aggravating that you read that, close to $250 million of extra money is going to go to this company, despite the fact that they've only delivered 112 of the 152 new Orange Line cars in service, only 18 of the 252 new Red Line vehicles. It sounds as to a layperson is they're being rewarded for their ineptitude, but I think you or some other leader in the system says it'd be a hell of a lot more expensive to start over with a different vendor. But the question is, it seems to me that when something like that is done, and you do get $250 million, despite the fact that you're not doing what you said you're going to do, it almost creates an incentive to continue to not do what you say you're going to do. So is there some enforcement mechanism that will ensure people that this time they can't get more money when they do less?
So a couple of things. There are liquidated damages that are still assessed with regards to early issues that were the result of CRC and their subs. The dollars that we're providing as part of this new contract, $148 million, majority of that is going to the sub-suppliers because of material escalation, material availability, inflation that was unforeseen after COVID. So this is for real, tangible cost increases.
Well, you're waiving $90 million in penalties, too.
Well, some of those liquidated damages will be waived as new cars are delivered, as they meet their schedules. It's an incentive to deliver. So a lot of what looks like a big number in the beginning is only going to be paid as we get new cars. There is some early payment to cover some tariffs, and there's going to be some payments to the subs to cover money spent already on materials that they've already purchased. But this is indicative of not just this contract. This is something that
we should say
manufacturers...
the original contract is not under you. We should make that clear. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay, Jim, but I own it now, right? But the way we need to look at contracts going forward is because it takes approximately 6 years to get a car. Their manufacturers are estimating material costs over the time, and particularly through the build. And what we've had with meetings at the White House, meetings with FTA, is we need to look at the ability to have price adjustments, which is what this really was, the ability to cover inflation and even early progress payments, because you're building a lot of risk into these vendors, and they take on a lot, and usually it ends up being in the cost. But you're right, this decision to do this, we will have these cars faster than we would have had we done nothing. Had we done nothing, we might not even get cars because we were worried about the subs having to withdraw. And at the end of the day, if we went out with a new procurement, it would be at least 6 years before we had the next new car, and then you have to go through the whole issue of making sure you have the quality. This really was the best means of doing it, and we wouldn't have done it if we had not seen reliable production since, I would say, October, when we sat down with them. We looked at what the issues needed to be, how do we improve the production line. So this is all part of seeing that we are getting reliable fleet right now.
But can you assure them that there won't be, can you assure riders, taxpayers, that there won't be future payments to CRRC if there is continued non-compliance with delivery deadlines?
Non-compliance is on them. What we have done here is really just take care of the things that were not their fault, not the T's fault, but had been part of the cost, had been known in advance that these costs would have happened.
Okay, let's go to, I'm sorry, Margaret, go ahead.
I was just going to, no, go ahead, we'll go to the call. Let's go to Bobby in Wakefield.
Hey,
Hi,
Bobby.
Hey, sorry about that. I got disconnected. Okay. Sure. I'm a daily commuter rail rider. I'm also a daily blue bike user, and I'm wondering if the MBTA has considered any kind of partnership between the two that would allow me, for example, to buy a commuter rail pass that also includes a bike ride.
That's interesting.
I'm smiling because he may not believe it, but I actually asked the team not long ago to look at that. First mile, last mile is an important component of people not only using our system, but maybe not even relying on cars to get to our stations, to get to work. So I don't have an answer yet, Bobby, but we are looking at that.
You know, Phillip Eng, one of the problems with you is you're far too calm for this job. And I said this to when we met you a few months ago. We were talking about the T, I think sometime in early March. I may get the facts slightly wrong. There was a day when you announced that service on one of the green lines, I think it through Kenmore in the morning, was fully restored. And it was not more than a couple of hours later where there was a derailment on the same line. How do you, as a manager, how do you, I don't mean what do you do to address it? Obviously, you get it up and running as quickly. How do you deal with that as a human who happens to be the head of the system? How do you deal with that kind of crap?
I think one of the reasons I came back to public service is because of these challenges. And not that I want those things to happen, but you know they always potentially can happen. It really is, how do you get through it? How do you lead the team through it? And how do you make the public have confidence that you can mitigate, you can make those incidents further and farther apart. It really is about, you never know what the next day brings, you never know what the next hour brings, but it really is then we got to get through it, and we will, thankfully, no one was hurt.
Do you yell at anybody?
You know, years ago, I lost my temper at something, and then I kind of realized, you know what, I shouldn't have let myself get to that level. I wanted to stay where I am. I need to stay level-headed. And I think the team needs to know that we're in this together, and I will have their back. And when there's a tough challenge, bring it to me. Let me get involved. Let me be able to be part of the solution and help guide and advise. And then I'll take the responsibility if something goes wrong.
I had a feeling that might be the answer.
You know, we've read a lot about derailments in recent years. What makes trains derail? Why? Do they derail?
Well, there's all sorts of different reasons.
Like what?
Well, it could be infrastructure. It could be
speed.
It could be speed if you're going around a curve at the wrong speed. That's why the things that we're doing on the commuter rail with automatic train control, pilot train control, to be able to control speeds, the training that goes into it for our operators, and the ability to have real-time information. So it's a whole host of things.
And the rails that are too narrow, the newer train by Tufts, the extension, that's really bad because obviously if the rails are too narrow, the trains will go off them a lot. Yeah, there is a period. There's a distance that's allowable. That project, I'm pleased to say, all the gauge has been corrected. Yep. We've done the geometry track scan, and all the results show that the rework is complete and done properly. But those are the things that, when we're managing construction projects, when we're doing maintenance work, all of those things are things that we need to make sure are done properly before we put service back. And we're doing that with all of the diversions right now. It is important to note.
Before we take a break, we're getting a couple texts. Is the Sumner Tunnel's closing again at the end of the summer, right? For July and August?
That's what we're preparing for.
And the question is being asked by an anonymous person, is last year the Blue Line was free during the closure? Is it going to be free again this year?
That's what we anticipate, that we want to support the project. We anticipate that all of the mitigation that we've done was important to the support. But those are the things that we're sitting down right now, but I fully expect that it will be free.
It will be free.
Okay, we're talking with the head of the MBTA, Phillip Eng. He's going to be with us till the top of the hour, taking our questions and yours. We'll get to as many as we can. The number to call or text, 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Behind every headline
Worcester's Public Housing Authority is under investigation for unsafe living and working conditions.
Is a human story.
I have kids and they're complaining that they're cold and I can't do anything about it.
There's rules to this game of maintaining apartments. It's gotta be safe for everybody.
They're afraid that housing will evict them, and that's why people don't talk.
GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
Support for GBH comes from you and Family Services of Central Massachusetts, offering the AmeriCorps Seniors, a program of volunteer opportunities for those 55 years and older, located on the 3rd floor of the Worcester Senior Center. Learn more at sevenhills.org/affiliates.
And Eversource, committed to helping businesses reach sustainability goals and lower their energy use through energy assessments and custom recommendations. Learn more at eversource.com.
And Seasons 4, the outdoor living store on Mass Ave in Lexington, featuring over 100 styles of contemporary and traditional outdoor furniture, plus a wide selection of plants, statuary, and garden accessories. Seasons4.com. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, including Andrew Lloyd Webber, Liz Cheney, former NATO Commander Admiral James Stavridis, and Supreme Court Correspondent Nina Totenberg. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. We're not at the library Tuesday. There's some marathon cleanup thing here. We're back Wednesday. The Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, joins us from 1 to 2 for Ask the Attorney General. And we have a special BPR remote broadcast at UMass Boston on May 3rd. Among the people who will join us is Governor Healy, former Commissioner of the EPA, Gina McCarthy, the newly installed Chancellor of UMass, Paul English, who's funding the AEI program there, and a whole bunch of other, I think, pretty interesting people. We're live at the library with Phillip Eng. Phil is the general manager of the T, celebrating, I think that's the right verb, 1 year in office, taking it, look at him, raising his fists and... Let me tell you something. When I grow up, Marjorie, I want to be as calm as Phillip Eng. That's what I want to be. 877-301-8970. If you want to ask a question directly at the library, just go over to Ethan. We'll do the best we can.
You wanted to add something about the Blue Line?
Oh, yeah.
Phillip Eng?
I just wanted the one point that Jim, when he talked about the tunnel closure coming up, next week we have the next phase of the Blue Line diversion, where we'll be the first 3 days from Maverick to Wonderland. And then the next 9 days after that, it'll be shortened from Airport to Wonderland. When we complete that work over the course of 12 days, I'm putting a lot of pressure on my team because we expect the whole Blue Line will be restriction-free. And that'll be compared to where we were last year, able to run 5-minute headways. We will be able to, I believe, improve on that coming up for this summer. And that's an important component. That's why all of the work we're doing, I know that these different diversions impact people's travels differently, but at the end, we want to give them the results that they deserve, and that's reliable service.
Here's a question from Jim, not this Jim, different Jim. When does Phil Eng think the Federal Transportation Administration, whatever they are, the FTA, will end its safety receivership of the T? What does the T need to do to get beyond this receivership?
Well, we have made really good progress with regards to the FTA, SMI. They have started to transition some of the responsibilities. Actually, not transitioning, because the Department of Public Utilities also has oversight. But even when we finish and all of the caps are lifted, FTA always will play a role with regards to monitoring, participating, and supporting. At the end of the day, all of us have the same goal, and that's to make sure the safety of our workforce, the safety of the public, and the delivery of the service. So even once we get to that point where those caps and the FTA SMI is fully complete, it never really ends. The relationship is always there, Marjorie.
Okay.
Jennifer in Holliston, you're on with Phil Eng, GM of the T. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
I'm calling to ask about the Longwood area specifically and all the medical personnel that work from 7 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And we can't really use the T or the commuter rail because if you live outside of Boston, you can't get on the rail in time to get home before like 10 p.m. And that's because the rides get so rare after 7 p.m.
So what's the question there, Jennifer? What can you do about that?
So basically, is there, we're talking about thousands of people moving around the city at that time. Should that be a priority in arranging schedules?
Thank you, Jennifer.
So Jennifer, one of the things that I'm looking at beyond just getting our system back to where it was is how do we improve service, particularly in areas like that. My own daughter also has to be at work before our service runs. So that means, unfortunately, she's taking a car. But what I'd like to do as we continue to build the workforce back, hire more operators, get enough equipment to be able to increase service. That would be the next phase, to look at how do we improve service for those types of areas where people rely on it but can't use it because we don't run early enough, we don't run late enough. And then I said earlier, frequency is going to be important. This is all part of moving forward, fixing what we need today, but then making sure we have a workforce that can actually deliver improved, robust, frequent service.
Jennifer, thanks. Speaking of that, my understanding is one of the things in that FTA safety report, whatever it was, 38 points or something, was about hiring. How's net hiring going? I mean, I know early on we got numbers from you, the public did, about hiring, which was great, but there were a decent number of people who were leaving as well. How's net hiring going, Phil Eng?
From the front line, the operators, the workforce that's doing the work, we're continuing to be very strong. We're still seeing a lot of people interested in working for the T. In fact, recently, we welcomed a whole lot of classes that just finished the training, which is great because now they're not only the hiring, but now they're going to be performing, operating our trains, operating buses, and actually working in our system. The numbers continue to be robust. We're going to continue to do a hiring outreach this year. So it's continuing to be really exciting to welcome in new people and just seeing the excitement in their face, wanting to work at the T. It's really great because they are the future leaders of the organization.
Michael in Jamaica Plain wants to know about efforts the MBTA will be making to make transit more accessible to riders who have disabilities.
That's all part of the program. The ride is a key component. Our equipment, even not the ride, is important to make sure they're all accessible. And one of the things that we did, particularly with the ride, when we signed the contract with our Carmen's Union 589, we also knew that we needed to focus on our ride operators. And immediately, it took us a period of time, but we were able to have them renegotiate salaries of their operators. And we're starting to see that now has an increased, not only morale of the existing operators, but we're starting to see the applications come in there too. So that's the other next component of getting the ride operators to the level that we can offer the service that the people that rely on that, the level of service they deserve, particularly knowing that we're looking to actually address more needs as we go into low-income fares this year.
Yeah, because I was going to ask about that, the fares on the ride, because we get a lot of texts about people with disabilities saying they're too expensive for them.
Well, that's why when the low-income fare program is very important, and one of the decisions that we made is to have it on every mode of travel.
Okay.
The ride, commuter rail, the buses, the subways, the ferries, because everybody, through all the areas that we serve, there's always people that could use a little extra help.
You know, one last thing about the low-income ride thing. I mentioned in passing when we brought up the topic before, Phil Eng, that we are, according to either, I think it was Commonwealth's Beacon magazine, one of the last urban areas to implement this. We talk regularly, legislation on Beacon Hill, we're the 48th state, we're the 47th state. This is, again, not on your watch. What took us so long to embrace low-income fares when so many other urban areas knew this is the right way to go?
I don't know if I have the answer why we didn't have it. All I know is that right now, what we're focused on at the T is doing things sooner rather than later, tackling problems that have stood for too long, and whatever dollars we have, put them to best use. What I hope the public starts to see is that there are results, meaningful results, that improve their daily lives, and again, bring back people to the system.
Eric in Worcester, you're on with Phil Eng. He's the GM of the T. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. And I will say I'm with you that I am amazed that he doesn't have that tinge of anger every time he talks about it.
That's exactly what I was trying to say, Eric.
That I think is very common for the rest of us. I will say I'm cautiously optimistic, and it's great to see all of this positive movement with the T. I live out in Worcester, and for years I commuted into Boston on the Heart to Hub express train that they ran. And unfortunately, they've dropped that train altogether from Worcester. So they've really made it not feasible to live in central Massachusetts and work in Boston any longer. So what I'd like to hear from the general manager is a commitment to bring back that service to make it feasible to live in central Massachusetts and work in Boston, and to work with our city manager and city council in Worcester to bring back that service as soon as possible.
We can hear that tinge of anger in your voice there, Eric. Thank you so much for the good call. Appreciate it.
Well, I could just, not here in a prior role, I was once told maybe I'm too nice for the role. They still gave me the role, and here I am today. Regarding Worcester, and we are talking with the local delegation very closely, I know how important express trains are to folks who live further out. I also know how important it is to have more frequent trains through the whole corridor that we are serving. And what we did when we changed the schedule, I understand it impacted some folks in Worcester, is we made it more frequent throughout the whole corridor. What we did see is strong ridership return across every station. Having said that, I just want you to know that we are talking with the Worcester delegation. We have some ideas on how to balance the needs across all of our stations that we serve, but also to see how we could accommodate improved shorter trip for some of those in Worcester.
Eric, thanks for the call. You know, Transit Matters put out a pretty clever and I think important list, and maybe even yesterday, I think, the MBTA's slowest and most bunched buses, according to them. They're calling them the first annual Pokey and Schleppy Awards. When you see something like this, what do you do as the boss? When you assume, I don't know if you've seen this yet, but when you do see a report from an important advocacy group in your area, what do you do?
Well, I think no matter who brings something to our attention, whether it's an advocacy group, whether it's the public like here today, and whether it's anybody, it's all important for us to hear, for us to absorb it, and then we will sit down, we'll take a look, and we'll see, is there something that we can do, is there something that we're missing? Because I think one of the things that frustrates the public or anybody is that they repeat it year after year and we don't tackle it. But what I want to show is that we are a can-do organization, that we want to be able to solve problems. Now, I know that means I can't solve everything today because there's always different challenges, but there's things that we can do to mitigate things. So certainly love to get a copy of the report. I have not seen it.
I'm going to hand it to you right now.
Okay.
How about that? And then you can follow up on that. There you go.
Now you have a record that I know. Okay.
Margaret and Woburn, you're on with the head of the T, Phil Eng. Hi there, Margaret. Thank you for calling.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I wanted to thank you for your good service in South Boston. And I also wanted to ask you if there's any chance you could have more buses go in the downtown area that are going to the hospitals. There are many people, and like going up Procurement Street to go to Tufts, the Bywin building, if they can be more frequent.
Thank you, Margaret.
So,
all right.
So we've been working on getting our operators back to the levels that we need to be able to run service that we used to run. But that's not where we're looking to finish. We're looking to actually take a look at all of our bus network, and that's the whole part of the bus network redesign that will look to implement not only shorter trips, but trips to areas that are currently not being served. One of the things I'd like to do, and I have been doing, is when I get out to the different communities, is actually listen to those different needs so we can actually start to think, is there a way that we can actually add service, maybe working with the regional transit authorities as well to partner. So these are all solutions that we're going to be focused on because we understand how important the bus network is to connecting people to the rest of our network.
You know, I think Marilyn at the mic in the library has another question about the ride. Am I right, Marilyn? Can you just pull the mic down a drop to get close to your... Ethan's going to help you. This is Marilyn. She's at the library. She's about to ask a question of the GM of the team. Marilyn, we're glad you're here. Take it away.
Thank you. And thank you for coming today. And maybe we should have your picture crossing the finish line down here with your arms raised because you made a marathon. I would like to know your plan of action to revitalize the MBTA section called The Ride. It is paratransit. Everybody worked on it to get it more and more reliable. It was not perfect, and to make it affordable. But it seems that we went backwards. We have bad scheduling. We're not getting our door-to-door service we're guaranteed. We can't even get our drivers who wanted uniforms in the uniform. They wear whatever. And we even to the equipment. Before, everybody saw the equipment and tried it. Now we feel every bump on the road, which affects your back, and we got many bumpy roads. And so the whole system needs to go through and get back to where we were and then improve it some more.
Let's hear what the GM has to say. Marilyn, we really appreciate your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. And we chatted before the show, but if I'm actually running the marathon, I won't be running across the finish line. You'll be carrying me across the finish line.
That's a long way, 26 miles.
But the ride is important to us, and we know that the levels of service need to be improved. One of the things that we just reported on yesterday to the subcommittee, safety subcommittee, is the number of operators. To get to the levels that we need to be, we need approximately 600 operators. Right now, we're nearly 200 short. But that's one of the reasons when we increase our salaries for our operators on green and bus and heavy rail, we knew that we had to focus on the salaries for the ride operators because what we needed to do is make sure we didn't lose more operators. And we are seeing that, that increase in interest, and we want to retain the people. I know that doesn't answer your question, but we are going to get that system back up where we have enough operators to get to the levels of service that you need. And then the other component is real-time information that I think our riders need. We were chatting about you were waiting a long time and you didn't have information where the ride was. That shouldn't be. I'm working with the IT folks to look at different technologies, but real-time information is so available today. We should be able to give that to you and your other riders.
Marilyn, we're really glad you voiced these issues. Thank you so much for being here. 877-301-8970.
Let's go to Paula in Nahant. Hi, Paula.
Hey, Paula.
Hi there. I'm Paula from Nahant, and I commute on both the Blue Line to downtown and on the Lynn Ferry. And I read last night that both the commuter rail from Newburyport and Rockport will be ceasing to run to North Station. Instead, will be using shuttle buses from Swampscott to North Station at the same time that the Blue Line will be shuttling service between Wonderland and Airport during April 20th to the 28th, which is literally the 28th is the day before the Lynn Ferry service is supposed to begin and start up again for this year. Is there any way to either delay the work until the ferry starts or have the ferry start a week early to alleviate a lot of issues, traffic issues that are sure to come up from these actions?
Paula, thanks.
Hi, Paula. Yes, we had looked very closely at all of the work that we needed to do. That work on the commuter rail line is tied to the last mile of ATC, automatic train control, and positive train control. That's a federal mandate to have that done by the end of the year. We had looked at the possibility of trying to do it later in the year, but if we did push it out, that would push it out to September, and the deadline would be missed. We do have supplemental service, bus service, alternative service to provide that. With regards to the Lynn Ferry, that boat is actually being prepared and prepped for the service that we have. I'm pleased to say, though, that is starting earlier. We will be running it on weekends as well this year. And then with regards to the Blue Line, we are having alternative service there. I know this is a challenge for some folks, but the folks have looked at alternative service. We really believe that we will be able to carry the folks to get them where they need to. The commuter rail work is 9 days, 5 work days and 2 weekends. We have confidence that we can support the ridership, but I understand the concern that you have. We did look at every possible alternative.
Paula, good luck. We appreciate your call and your thoughts.
We always get a lot of these. Matter of fact, we have a compilation of some of the themes of the texters, but one of the big 2 themes are fare evaders and turnstile jumpers. Is this a big deal on the T? I know a lot of people on the Green Line get in the second train, but that's because it goes faster if you don't collect the fares.
Well, all revenue is important to us.
Yeah.
And I know that we're not the only system in the world that faces this challenge. We are looking at different technologies. We're looking at bringing on some folks that will be riding the system that actually remind people of the need to pay fares. And right now, yes, we're opening doors because when you have heavy crowding, you want to be able to allow people in. And we're relying on people to honor the system and pay their fares. That's important to us. But this is something we're going to have to continue with an education program to our riders as well, because they see that we need the resources to be able to deliver the service that they have. And I know that some people may be challenged with the fares. That's why the low-income fares, I think, is important. But that's not something that we're not ignoring that need, and we are looking at different ways. But I will say that it is a challenge. I've seen so many agencies that come up with different gates, with different things, and people have ways to
what are you supposed to do with a turnstile jumper? Have the
I can answer. Do you remember Rich Davey? One of your predecessors, Rich Davey.
Yeah.
He, what do you call it? Not rescued. He tackled a fare jumper in 2010. Can we expect the same of you, Phillip Eng, or what?
Maybe if I bulk up a little bit.
Maybe you should bulk up a little.
We're trying to de-escalate things, but we're going to continue an education program. We want our operators and all to remind people, but we also don't want to put them in a position where perhaps we escalate an issue. So it's a balance between enforcement, education, and looking at technology.
By the way, do you have a site on your site where, the lines are full in a nanosecond today, and as soon as someone hangs up, it's filled in a nanosecond. Is there a place where riders can send questions and get responses from your leadership team or the appropriate people?
There is. I don't know the website for me. I know a lot of people have figured out my email, which is fine.
Your own email?
Yes, but that's okay because I ride the system every day. People do come up to me. Some apologize. I say, no, that's why I'm on the system.
What's your email?
You want my...
Well, you said people have them.
Well, if they want to get in touch with the MBTA about their problems.
During the lunch break, we will find out what the appropriate part of your site is, and we'll give it to you at 12:06. Stephen Cambridge, you have a minute.
Hey, I got a quick question.
Yep.
I was on a cruise. They built a cruise ship in 18 months. China can build high-speed rails 2 miles in 1 day. So why does it take 6 years to build a rail car? There's an old saying in Massachusetts, don't kill the job. Construction jobs. Don't kill the job. It looks like it's alive and well with the MBTA.
Steve, we got the question. Thank you. How about it, Mr. Eng here?
Well, I know that there's other ways of procuring contracts. There's other ways of procuring rolling stock, the train cars. That's one of the things I'm looking at moving forward, because in North America, the way the procurements are, every design is a new design, and every new car build typically has taken almost 6 years. It shouldn't take that long. At the same time, there's a lot of regulations and safety components that go into that build and that design. But I'm looking at how to improve that.
We only have a minute. Did you tell me during the break that your wife is here? Is she here?
I think she had to leave.
She stepped out.
Oh,
so we can't ask her if you're this calm at home.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
I'm
sorry we didn't get to meet her.
I'm glad she's not here to answer.
You probably heard of some of these things, but just to give you a quick sense of what we got here from the Ruggles Station escalator and the Bowden Station escalator. People are very upset about that. Worried about the ceiling and Alewife, the Forest Hills digital access screen, and some weird smell at Stony Brook Station. Those seem to be themes from our listeners, so I want to let you know if you don't know about those already.
Well, thank you. And my chief of stations and facilities, Dennis Farley, he is looking at how we maintain and fix elevators, escalators. He's looking at all of the things that are tied to our stations. And that's why you see with part of the diversions, we are fixing lights, we're fixing benches, we're fixing those components, and escalators are important to that.
Before you go, is it possible mbta.com/customer-support is the place to go?
That sounds like it.
We're going to check it. If that's not it, we'll tell you at 12:06. mbta.com/customer-support. We really appreciate your time, Phil. Thanks
and we
so
want
much
to
for
mention,
being
too,
here.
that GBH News Transportation reporter Bob C. welcomes MBTA General Manager Phillip Eng, Secretary of Transportation Monica Tippett-Nutt, and Jared Johnson of Transit Matters on stage to ask what it will take to bring reliable transit service back if the state can afford the needed changes. That is going to be April 16th, 2024 at GBH. You want to know more about it, go to gbh.org/events. Phil Eng, thank you very
Can't thank
much.
you enough. Hope to see you
Lots
again
of people
soon.
really
Thanks.
appreciate you coming in. We got a lot of texts saying thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Anyway, after the new news going.
More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Mass General Cancer Center, dedicated to providing compassionate care and cancer specialists who are experienced in the cancer you have. When you hear the word cancer, their team is ready. Learn more at massgeneral.org/cancer.
Who are tomorrow's virtuosos? On A New Great Performances, conductor and violinist Scott Yu investigates the origins of young musicians by exploring their learning process. Watch Now Hear This, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
I'm Henry Santoro, news anchor and host, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org.
The medical field face keeping patients' trust and how to build it back in the era of fake news and misinformation. Then is our food policy analyst Corby Cummer on the hottest restaurant in France, an all-you-can-eat buffet, Jim.
I know.
Inspired by a great GBH News piece by our own producer, Hannah Loss, we'll end the week taking your calls on the humble, some might call them disgusting, porta-potties. Will be all over the marathon route on Monday. All that ahead, Boston Public Radio, 89.7, GBH Live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. A central part of FICE is up for a vote in Congress today. Members of the House decide whether to reauthorize a section of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act which allows the U.S. government of growing threats of a possible Iranian strike on Israeli targets. It would be in retaliation for an airstrike last week on Iran's embassy compound in Syria. NPR's Rob Schmitz has the latest from Tel Aviv.
Iran's leaders have repeatedly vowed to punish Israel for an April 1st strike in Syria that killed several Iranian commanders. President Biden said Wednesday that Iran was indeed threatening what he called a significant attack, adding that American support for Israel in the event of an attack is ironclad. Israel's put its military on alert, and the U.S. dispatched its top military commander for the Middle East, General Michael Kurilla, to Israel on Thursday. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin spoke by phone with Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, assuring him that Israel could count on full U.S. support to defend Israel against an Iranian attack. Rob Schmitz, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
European Union lawmakers have voted in favor of enshrining the right to abortion in the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. Esme Nicholson reports the resolution is non-binding and abortion remains heavily restricted in a number of EU member states.
The European Parliament resolution to make access to abortion a fundamental right has passed by 336 votes to 163. The vote is symbolic, though, and has very little chance of making it into the EU Charter, which requires unanimous support from all 27 council members. While France has enshrined the right to abortion in its constitution, wide access remains illegal in countries such as Malta and Poland. Earlier this week, the EU Commission registered a European Citizens Initiative calling for a financial mechanism to help women access safe and legal abortion within the bloc. This is seen as a way to work around national laws. For NPR News, I'm Esme Nicholson in Berlin.
In the U.S., the Democratic Party's election year push advocating for stronger abortion protections takes Vice President Kamala Harris to Arizona today. Arizona being an election year battleground state. In Arizona, the state Supreme Court recently upheld a near total ban on abortions. This is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Federal, state, and local leaders offering their usual guidance ahead of Monday's Boston Marathon. They are urging spectators to use public transportation to get to and from the race. Ken Green is chief of the MBTA Transit Police. He says that he and his law enforcement partners have seen no credible threats against the marathon, but he is asking the public to help safety officials stay on top of things.
The best resource that law enforcement has is the public. So we ask, if you see something, say something. Be our extra set of eyes and ears. The more eyes and ears out there, the better.
30,000 athletes are expected to take part in this year's marathon, with roughly 500,000 spectators cheering them on. Say what you will about legal sports wagering in Massachusetts, there's one thing you cannot say, and that it's not a lucrative business. Herald reports that it's in the 1 year since it became legal, the state has had a banner year with over $6 billion being bet on professional sports and some college games as well. The numbers show that there are 1.6 million gamblers making wagers, generating more than $500 million in revenue for the sports books and hundreds of millions of dollars for the state. Red Sox and LA Angels open a series at Fenway tonight. Don't bet on that game. The Celtics play the Hornets at the Garden. We're at 63 degrees outside our studios. Rain will stop at some point today. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming. Thank you. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We will not be here at the library on Tuesday. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing because our colleague Jamie is in line to get a sandwich, and he is leading the applause
for
us returning to...
Thank you.
That is a man on a mission,
That's right.
I should say. Thank you, Jamie.
So
Sorry,
anyway,
Marjorie.
we are not going to be at the library Tuesday because they're doing a big cleanup after the marathon. We will be back here on Wednesday, and we're going to be joined by the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Andrea Campbell. She's going to take our questions and yours from 1 to 2. And then we're going to have a special appearance over at the gorgeous UMass Boston Dorchester campus on May 3rd. We're going to be joined there by Governor Maura Healey and Gina McCarthy, who ran the EPA for Barack Obama. Hello again,
And
Jim.
a bunch of other great people, too. By the way, I just want to confirm that the address that we gave you right before the break to submit a comment, a question, even a compliment, a complaint, to the T, mbta.com/customer-support is the place to go. They say you can expect a response to most tickets within 5 business days.
What Phil Eng did when he was leaving with us? He was answering questions.
Talking to real people?
For as much as he could before he had to go to his next engagement.
By the way, what we said before, I just want to reiterate it. We could not even get prior GMs of the T to respond to our emails, much less come and answer questions. So it
oh
really
my God.
is.
When I was at the Herald, I called them like 25 times, and they never called me back. I like to badge them over and over and over again. It wouldn't call me back.
In any case, we're joined now by Callie Crossley. Callie is the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley. You can catch that Sunday nights right here on 89.7 at 6. You can also hear Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition, and she's the co-host for GBH's The Culture Show, which airs daily 2 o'clock right here at 89.7. And a reminder, at 2 o'clock on Fridays, it not only airs, it is live right here at the Boston Public Library. If you're here, please stay. And if you're not here, come on down. Callie, good to see you.
Good to see you.
So, Callie Crossley, as most people know by now, O.J. Simpson, a phenomenal football player, but a man who murdered his wife, and the guy that she was planning a date with, Ron Goldman, died yesterday. His family said it was from cancer. We're going to play a little sound here from a juror reading the verdict in the O.J. Simpson trial. Here it is.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information.
You can hear the reaction from the family of Ron Goldman. They were devastated. But this trial was about a lot of things. One of them was about a big difference in the reaction between white America and black America to this verdict, and also the change it brought to the media in terms of the birth of reality TV and basically court TV. So what were your thoughts in this last day about the death of O.J. Simpson?
My thoughts were that it started off being about O.J. Simpson, the incident itself, the murder. By the way, we should say that nobody has ever really gone to jail for those murders.
No.
So that's still out there. And then it changed into something else from just a communal experience. And people have to sort of shut their minds off to what they know to be true now, and to understand the power of celebrity at that point and now. Now, it's like, to me, it feels like, is there a celebrity microphone? Everything is celebrity. But celebrity was at the heart of this. And I say that it started with O.J. because I think whatever people thought about him originally, people just did not know who he was. And that was revealed as time went on. Just another thing to pay attention to. There are very few, I think, trials and lead up to trials that last for about 16 months. This went on. So it was just constant out front at a time when internet was just coming on to be, something that was a player in in the information diaspora. And the kind of probing analysis. Now, some could argue some of it wasn't so probing and wasn't so analytical, and that's true. But there were a lot of people trying to be thoughtful about what does this mean legally, what's happening in the courtroom, breaking down all of that was quite detailed. And people followed that because they just didn't know what to think about it.
Well, we should say many months of a trial, which I believe was wall-to-wall on CNN, nothing but, and Court TV.
It's Court TV. Court TV was in its infancy.
Right. Yeah. And took, if I remember correctly, 3 hours for the jury to reach a verdict. But the thing that I have to say stays with me 20-plus years later, the immense racial divide, it was just, it's staggering. I mean, it was almost like there were 2 trials, but when you look back at it after the fact, I guess not so surprising after you learn about what we learned during the trial, what the LA Police Department was really like and who it targeted for years.
I think you have to, it was said then, maybe lots of folks didn't hear it, but I want to just make it clear that it wasn't so much that there were lots of folks on one side, a lot of black people on one side saying, yay, OJ. It was really about an understanding of the system.
Absolutely right.
And how the system, and in LA particularly, The only word to use for the cop relationship with the community for so many years was brutal. So, even people who had managed to live their lives and not have any personal interaction with those cops were inclined to say, I've seen it, I know someone, and it happens all the time. So to ask Black LA folks and then people beyond that to say that any kind of justice is going to be brought was just, nobody thought it was going to happen. Actually,
well, I was thinking too, this was just a couple of years after we all saw Rodney King getting brutalized by all these LA cops. Nothing happened with those LA
all
cops.
Of 7 or 8 cops.
They were all acquitted. That's right. After we all saw it on television, what happened to him. And I heard this a black guy saying, and I thought he kind of captured it. He said something like, hundreds of black dead men have been murdered, and nobody's ever gone to jail. Mm-hmm. Didn't make it right what happened, but you could understand, especially when in LA with under Daryl Gates, a corrupt police chief, everybody, teenage boys are getting beaten up and brutalized, and young men are getting brutalized, and we've seen this in Boston. How many black men who didn't commit the crimes went to jail for 10, 20, and 30 years because they had lousy lawyers, and they were black guys. So I think that whole context is how you have to see this case.
You have to, and you have to also understand that we're talking black community writ large now, I'm talking, in generalities, but it was pretty true. Black people were like, OJ, he didn't mean anything to me personally. He was, this was the white guy's guy. That's who he was hanging with. So here you have a communal response to a system, to a guy that normally people would say, you're not my guy. So it's a very...
well, he didn't identify himself as their guy, so to speak,
he did
right?
No, as someone I just said the other day, he was not a soul brother, okay?
Well, remember what the lawyers did when they were touring O.J. Simpson's house? Before the jury got there, they went through and took the pictures of all the white people he was hanging out with off the walls and replaced them with his family or basically with African Americans. So the jury, which was a largely people of color jury too, remember they wanted to move the jury to Brentwood, and that didn't happen.
Right. I would say, because there's a lot of people hearing this news and wondering, why is everybody talking about it? Because I just don't get it. I would offer 2 sources that I highly recommend. Jeffrey Toobin's book, The Run of His Life. There were many books, I read them all, but his was extremely detailed and well-researched, and he was there. And another one that I have to say is head and shoulders above everything, and that is O.J. Made in America. Mm-hmm. It won the Oscar for the documentary feature. That's right. And people are going to say, I'm not watching. People told me, I'm not watching that. I know the story. And it was 7 hours, okay?
Yeah.
He didn't even get to the murder till the 4th hour because he really laid out for you what was happening, the communal response, who O.J. really was, and how it changed. And to see the people that they thought they knew him be interviewed at the beginning of that series and watch them change through the 7 hours, it's really something to see. And toward the end, just for people to know why you would want to stay with it, he had some of those jurors. I mean, it is an incredible, incredible piece of well-documented work.
Mm-hmm. You know what else too? This doesn't obviously excuse what he did, which was so brutal. I mean, he almost decapitated Nicole Brown Simpson. But I was reading the obit by Robert McFadden, New York Times writer, and he talked about how he's one of 4 children. Dad takes off when he's 4 years old. He had rickets as a kid and had to wear steel braces so he would be able to walk and run, and that's the irony. I mean, he became one of the greatest runners of all time. Hung with gangs for a while, and then went to the state school, I think it was San Francisco State or something, and got 52 touchdowns.
Yeah. Changed his whole life.
Changed his whole life, and then he went to USC, Heisman Trophy there, one of the best football players of all time. I mean, but we didn't, obviously, you never thought, even people that were close to him didn't think he had this kind of rage in him.
I know. I think there's 2 other things to raise. That case brought out domestic abuse, but we were at that point. We're still at that point to a large degree where people do not believe it.
Yeah.
She could have left. She had money. What was going on? And so when you really get down to the details of how many times she called the cops, what was going on in both the documentary and in the book, then you have a real understanding of how big a part domestic violence played. And one other thing, there are now experts who are saying they believe that he suffered from CTE, which, as you know,
could be
has been linked to people having really extreme behavior because it affects your brain. So I mean, and one other thing, DNA became a factor. So all this stuff that people are hearing now, because I looked at the fact that NCIS, the whole show is about DNA. They just celebrated 1,000 episodes. So now everybody's like, DNA, yes, of course, everybody DNA. That was a new thing. Nobody had done that.
By the way, my law school classmate, Peter Neufeld and Barry Scheck, I mean, they changed the world.
Right.
And they changed. By the way, a ton of the exonerations in this country through the Innocence Project, which they founded for people on death row, are because of what they did about DNA, which, as you said, was in its infancy in the Simpson trial.
And I'm so glad you made the point about domestic violence, because people may forget that they were divorced.
Yes,
she had left him and had called the cops another time before he murdered her, saying, he's here again,
kill
he's
me,
here
right?
again.
Didn't she say
She
that?
did. She did. She wrote that he was going to kill her and get away with it because the cops kind of were asking for his autograph when they came. But that she had left him, and that the most dangerous time in domestic violence cases is often when the woman does leave, and this often guys, not always guys, but come after these women and
remember,
kill them.
he was a big star, so this was, embarrassing to him, and all of that. There's all that going on. How many conversations have we had about these big sports people who are a lot of football players? I'm not trying to make a stereotype, but there are, involved in these, brutal domestic violence cases.
Yeah.
So. If people who are hearing it now who have no connection and can't figure out why so much conversation like we're having now, it's because all of these things were just coming into play. And imagine them all in one big stew.
As somebody said last night about this case, it had everything. It had sex, it had race, it had Hollywood, it had violence, it had sports, and it had one witness, the dog.
Oh, right. I forgot about the dog.
Yeah. So we go from maybe the greatest football player of all time who did unimaginably horrible things to maybe the greatest performer of all time who did unimaginably horrible things. Michael Jackson, there's a biopic out, or as a friend of mine used to call it, a biopic. I wonder who that might have been. It's you. That's right. Okay, I couldn't resist. So there's not even a trailer yet. We don't know. But, I don't know if you've ever had this discussion with you, and I'm assuming you've either had it on the Culture Show or will someday. Someone called the other day when we were talking about Me Too, and Matt Lauer saying, I want back in, and I also want an apology. He wants an apology. Someone called in and talked, I think it's fair to say he was calling about the unfairness of the treatment of Woody Allen, who obviously was accused of pretty horrible things, I think credibly, by his daughter. Michael Jackson is, I think, credibly accused of totally inappropriate, if not illegal or worse behavior around some young kids. What's your take on whether or not you separate the artist from the work, Callie Crossley?
I don't generally. I had a conversation on the Culture Show with my fellow co-hosts about how I almost had a breakup with a boyfriend about an unnamed artist, and he was like, "Are you out of your mind? This is the best person who," and I was like, "No, because he did it." So I really, this is a struggle for me. And yet I will tell you that last movie, that came out, he was making it and then he died.
This Is It?
This is it. Did you ever see it?
I
This
did.
Is It?
I saw parts of it.
Oh my God.
I swore I wasn't going to watch it, and I did watch it.
And what came out of that for me was like, I knew he had the talent and the skill and the depth of that, but to watch him in rehearsal with those
feel
people,
the same way. I know.
Those dancers that he was working with were 30 years younger than he?
Yeah.
And he was
incredible.
saying to them in that voice, with respect, you need to be able to do this more than once. And he's like keeping up with them, and he knows every note. I mean, it's arguable that he was, close to being
it's a fascinating debate, because he was
close to being
some kind of prodigy.
Oh, totally a prodigy. Remember him with the Jackson 5 when he was like this high?
Yeah.
It's a tough debate, because on the one hand, okay, he had some serious problems. And he was charged with sexually abusing children, which
I think he was credibly charged with.
Which is horrible. On the other hand,
the documentaries I thought were very good. And
one of the greatest artists of all time, or some of the greatest music of all time.
So what's your position? I haven't seen Woody Allen. Woody Allen was my favorite filmmaker prior to Dylan. I thought Annie Hall's one of the best movies ever made. I don't see his movies, but I'm a fraud because I do listen to Michael Jackson.
So do I, in the privacy of my own home.
Exactly.
To admit, I beat it as one of the best albums of all time.
So where are you?
Nothing like it for cleaning the house. You know what I mean? Where
are you on this whole artist in life versus on stage issue, or in film issue?
I think to ask people to never listen to Michael Jackson's music or the Jackson 5 forevermore, we are missing.
I have a better question. Every Thanksgiving, when I first met you, you told me you and your kids would watch what?
Hannah and her sisters.
Hannah, another one of the great Woody Allen. Do you continue to do it?
Well, we didn't watch it for a long time. This Thanksgiving, we did. So, I don't know. Do I have to go to confession, Callie Crossley? What do you think?
I don't know. It's a hard thing, and I have very strong feelings about some people more than the thing with Michael Jackson that's probably more difficult for everybody. You probably have to go out of your way a little bit to watch Hannah and her sisters.
Right.
But Michael Jackson's music is
omnipresent.
Everywhere.
It's totally
everywhere.
True. Yeah.
And so, I really didn't. I had an appreciation of him as a performer before all this other stuff came out. But after that film, I really had a sense of, oh my God, he really did write. He really did. So it's tough. But I would say I don't go out of my way.
I think
I don't go out of my way. If it drops in my lap sometimes, then, do I run to turn the radio off or whatever? Maybe not.
Yeah. It's a very tough one because there's a lot of artists who are really crummy people who did a lot of terrible things.
Well, being a crummy person is one thing.
Yeah.
But, the activities of O.J. as we've described, and then as some of us believe, and then of Michael Jackson is something totally different.
So we shouldn't watch Naked Gun this weekend, you don't think?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Well, based on that, we shouldn't watch anything that Donald Trump does either. Do we agree on that?
Well, I mean, at least...
Thank you. It's amazing how Donald Trump always gets applause, or maybe the it's amazing. It's a guaranteed applause line here.
So I think maybe, here's the other thing. I think also that if you're in a situation where you are communally enjoying the music or there's some discussion about it, you cannot have it without bringing up that piece of the history. I think that's the least that you can do.
Well, it's another piece of the history, too, which doesn't excuse it. You mentioned some speculating around CTE and O.J. Simpson, and no one is excusing it, but maybe part of an explanation. The father in this Jackson family was brutal.
Yeah.
And, one of the interesting things about this biopic or whatever it's called.
His nephew's going to play him. Looks just like him, I guess.
Well, not only is his nephew going to play him, but it's approved by the family, which suggests it may be great on his music and not so great on what he was doing when he was not on the stage.
But Coleman Domingo is playing
I know,
Joe.
the father.
So if they're really
that's a great point.
Let somebody play it, that's an excellent actor.
So Callie, you have a dual role today, unfortunately. Okay. Jared has disappeared. We have no idea where he is. So not only do you have to tell us what you're doing Sunday night at 6 o'clock, you have the responsibility to tell us what's happening on the culture show.
At least a clue. You're very close to the vest on the culture show.
Go ahead, Callie Crossley.
Well, on Sunday, I'm doing my regional roundtable, and we're looking at this $130 million debt payment that taxpayers are probably going to have to pay for the Pawtucket, Rhode Island soccer stadium. They were not expecting it, but that's some other stuff. Yeah, it's not good. Also, the surprise resignation of Congresswoman Annie Custer's stirring up a lot of fierce competition. That's really interesting in New Hampshire. So that's part of the regional roundtable discussion. But the second half of the show, as you know, GBH with Commonwealth Beacon is co-sponsored a poll by Mass Inc. And Under the Radar took the 2 abortion questions. So we are doing a deep dive into the abortion questions with 3 fabulous guests who are very, very on point to know, how to discuss this and how to deconstruct the 2 questions and what they may mean now, later, et cetera, et cetera. As for the culture show.
Here she goes.
We are, of course, going to talk, you did not get that from me, in a very deeper dive about the cultural impact of the O.J. phenomenon.
Oh, great.
So we are doing that. And we're also, sad to say, we have a Friday segment called Follow-Up, because we have so many of the stories that we've done come back, in the next few weeks with a total switch. We did a lot of work on that Golden Bachelor wedding, and they're now getting a divorce.
Oh my God!
Yes.
What has it been, a month and a half?
That is correct. And for all the other details, we will give you that on the Culture Show.
God! Okay.
Well, that's worth the price of admission itself, I should say. Again, 2 o'clock live right here at the Boston Public Library. I'm sorry, Marjorie.
We've been speaking with Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, Sundays at 89.7 GBH at 6 o'clock in the evening. You can also hear Callie's commentaries Mondays on GBH's Morning Edition, and she is co-host of the aforementioned GBH Culture Show, which airs daily at 2, and more about O.J. Simpson, the cultural impact, and the tragic divorce of the Golden Bachelor. Oh, well. Up next.
It was a long run.
It is time for BPR's Live Music Friday with the Alston-based indie pop band Winkler. We are very excited. They are known, as Alston's supergroup. So we're going to hear them next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
Another whistleblower at Boeing came forward with damaging allegations.
In a mad rush to reduce the backlog of the planes, Boeing did not follow its own engineering requirements.
He also claims that the company retaliated against him when he raised his concerns. I'm Elsa Chang. Hear more about the latest allegations on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Mass General Brigham Health Plan. With you every day. For more information, you can visit massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And Rockland Trust Bank, dedicated to providing advice and support to the community for over 115 years. More at rocklandtrust.com. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She's Marjorie, and we're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. No library next Tuesday, marathon cleanup kind of thing. We're back on Wednesday. Andrea Campbell, the Attorney General, joins us for an hour of Ask the Attorney General from 1 to 2. And on May 3rd, and by the way, this is open, not just to people who are at UMass Boston, a special BPR at UMass Boston on May 3rd. Governor Healy will be there with us in person. The former head of the EPA, a local woman, Gina McCarthy, will be there. The newly installed chancellor will be there, and a whole bunch of other, I think, really interesting people. We're joined now at the BPL for one of our favorite segments of the week, Live Music Friday by Winkler. It's an indie pop band making huge waves in the local basement scene. Winkler will play at the Rockwood Music Hall in Back Bay. That's on May 10th. We'll tell you again. You can get tickets at rockwoodboston.com. With an album in the works, an EP on the horizon, they've graciously agreed to treat us to a sneak peek of one of their new tracks. It's called Danger. We'll talk to a couple of them in a minute. But first, we're going to start with the music today. Here they are, performing Danger.
I'm in danger, I never knew till I found you. You're the danger, that's some true shit. Look around you. I'm a ranger. nothing. Glad I found you. I'm a river, you're the ocean that I'm bound to. I'm a sailor, you're the siren I could drown to. I could drown to. I'm in danger. I never knew till I found you. Till I found
Hey, that was Winkler, indie pop band. They're going to be joining us in just a second here, but I tell you, if you heard that music and you want to hear some more of it, they're going to play at the Rockwood Music Hall in the Back Bay on May 10th. If you want to get some tickets, I think they're going to come over and join us,
They
these
are.
gentlemen, right?
Justin and Christian are going to join us. Yeah.
Yeah, on May 10th, and you can get tickets at rockwoodmusic.com. I want to mention the other members of the band. Justin and Christian are going to join us. Alex Macy is on guitar, Ava Connaughton on bass, and Maddie Simpson on the vocals. And they're right here. That was terrific.
And these guys are Justin Schaefer's and Christian Smith. That was fabulous. Thank you, guys, for being here.
Yeah, so Austin Supergroup, that's what I read. There's a lot of people playing music in Austin, big indie rock scene in Austin, and you guys are the supergroup. How'd that happen for you, Justin?
Well, luck, I guess, yeah.
How'd you get together?
We went, or one of my friends had this, actually Maddie had
fellow Winkler bandmate, yeah.
had sort of like a program that she and another friend of ours made where it was like videos, like kind of like a series of live music in sort of like filmed in a bedroom. It was like a YouTube.
It was sort of a tiny desk concert, college
tiny
style,
desk.
if we could do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and Maddie and I were friends, and Justin was came on to do a few songs, and I was like, this guy's cool. This guy's nice and cool. And then we became friends and started playing music.
My understanding is Justin didn't care whether you were cool. He cared that you did analog recording. Is that not what drew you to Christian, or did I get that wrong?
Which in a way made him cool to me.
Okay.
I'd always been really like, I saw it from a distance, never knew how to do it. Christian, we met and was like, I'll help you record some songs to the tape. And I thought I had some songs. We ended up writing a song of our own maybe that first time. And that kind of started our partnership.
Why'd you perform with your shoes off, Justin?
I've been doing it that way. Is that okay to be in
You can be naked if you want. We don't care.
Well,
but why? Why does it make you do whatever you do better or whatever?
Sometimes we have those effect pedals on the ground, and I wear the big boots. And you have to hit really little buttons on the floor, and so I can't do them with the boots on.
That's a pretty good answer.
So yeah, that's the practical answer. Also, it's nice, feels natural.
Yeah.
I can hear the ground vibrating.
Got it. Okay, that's a good answer
We're
too.
talking to Justin Schaefer and Christian Schmidt. The group is Winkler, and they're going to be playing at the Rockwood Music Hall on May 10th. Get tickets, rockwoodboston.com.
And they're going to play again in a minute here.
They are.
Yeah.
So I mentioned before you guys being a so-called supergroup over there in Austin, but I don't think, I've lived practically in Austin. I didn't know there was this huge indie music scene in Austin. What's that about, Justin?
That's where, it's just a really strong community. There's a lot of college students. It's a good place. A lot of young people living there.
Yep.
Lots of bands formed there. And we're lucky, all of us, have music in our lives, and a lot of us play in other bands. We have there's what other bands? Sweet Petunia is another band.
Yeah.
Made up of Maddie's in that band. Christian and Alex are in another band called Dino Gala, and bassist Danny's in a band called Clifford, and we're making it up. There's a lot of music, and we're lucky to be able to share it with.
We're getting a lot of texts. Just clarify something. I know the answer, but they don't. This is not like a Henry Winkler tribute band. Is that correct? Is that correct? It isn't, right? I mean, it has
I
nothing to do
guess
with
not.
it.
Yeah.
Well, wait a second. Maybe it is. How did the name? I thought the name had nothing to do with it. Even though, didn't he go to college right down? Did he go to Emerson?
He's an Emerson alum.
Emerson, right?
alum.
Yeah.
Oh, I know that.
But it's not. But it's not named after Henry Winkler. Is that the bottom line? Wait a second. Christian isn't so sure here.
I don't know.
Well, how about this guy? What is the answer to the question? Let's get to the bottom of this.
The story we go with usually is that
we go with,
and this is the truth too. But we had a song that had a line about jumping the shark in Happy Days when they jump.
Yeah.
And so there's a line in that where we say Winkler. We thought it sounded cool at the moment, and then we had a show, our first show ever, and they needed a name to put on the bill, and we were like, well, that's got
the best we can
catchy,
do.
and we have it, and that was one of the only songs we had.
So, a lot of politicians are always threatening to ban TikTok or get rid of TikTok and make this Chinese company make some agreements so that people aren't getting, or the Chinese government isn't getting people's information. But then you hear artists, or lots of people, but artists also fighting back, say, hey, that's how we got ourselves going here. And you've talked about that, Justin. What's the deal with you and TikTok?
It's fun. It's a love. It's kind of I don't know. The love-hate relationship with the TikTok, because it's easy to spend a lot of time on there, and then like my eyes feel all tired. And there's a lot of people on there, but it's a great way for people to share their art as well.
Yeah, and get publicity for what you're doing.
Yeah,
or get
great.
attention for what you're doing.
Yeah.
So what? How did that happen exactly? You started playing stuff on TikTok.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, we'll share little things, and we'll share little parts of rehearsals and things occasionally. There's been shows we played as far as like Las Vegas, where people have come up and said, oh, we saw you on
Would you be screwed
TikTok.
if TikTok was shut down? It's unlikely, but
we'd
would you
find a way.
You would find a way.
Yeah.
Are you? First of all, you have other jobs, right? I mean, in addition to some of you playing in other bands, Christian. First of all, do you all go to Berkeley?
We did. That's
everyone went to Berkeley. That's great. I mean, it's fabulous.
Everybody we have on, they either went to Berkeley
Emerson
or to
if
Emerson.
they're actors, and Berkeley if they're musicians. What do you do when you're not doing this? Like all of you, give us some. What do you do?
Well, I guess when I'm working, I work at like a coffee shop. It's like one of the pavement coffee shops.
It's unionized, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty great.
There you go.
And what do you do?
I work at a comic book store.
Newbury? Oh,
yeah.
we're not supposed to say that or something?
Sure. It's a Newbury, yeah.
And what are your colleagues? What do they do over here? I'm just curious. You remember them, the three of them in the band?
Are you guys still over there?
What do they do? We have a mic. Can we activate that mic there? Hold on 1 second. Here it goes.
Can you hear me?
What do you do?
we can hear you.
Well, I work at Club Passim.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my
Great.
goodness.
So does Alex, actually. Alex also works at Club Passim.
Hi, Alex. That's amazing. And what do you do?
I'm a social worker.
You are? Where are you? Do you mind asking where you're social worker?
I work in Alston. Yeah, I do like community mental health.
That's great.
Yeah,
so how do you do what you do if you have jobs? How do you do the band thing? Any of you can answer that question.
It's a lot of scheduling. And
a lot of Google Calendar.
Yeah. But I assume the goal, since you seem to be loving this, I assume the goal is ultimately get to the point where you can do this and this pays the bills. Is that fair there or no?
And then the comic book store can become the hobby.
Yeah, that's right. You were talking about the Austin music scene. There's a lot of indie kind of stuff, right? And that you went to Vegas. I guess you're worried that you wouldn't fit in with the people with all the mohawks and the piercings, but it went okay anyway.
And the punk festival.
The punk festival, yeah.
They were nice. Yeah.
They were nice,
really
yeah.
You're not exactly a punk band, right?
But why indie in Austin and not punk or not some other kind of music?
I don't know. There's a lot of different kinds of music out in Alston. I think we play with bands that we fit in with a little bit more genre-wise, so that tends to be the scene, the area that we see. But there's big like punk scenes, big folk scenes and lots of singer-songwriter stuff.
Yeah, when I think of Austin,
Right?
I think of 12 people in this teeny tiny 3-room apartment getting ripped off by the landlord, and all,
Yeah, it's like
all
that.
the mattresses that you see.
Well, those
on
aren't
the
mutually
street.
exclusive.
Yeah, that's always when the move-in to September Day is like stuff like junk from everybody's apartment.
Austin Christmas.
That's
Is
right,
it?
Austin
Yeah.
Christmas, and you're always afraid what may be underneath some of those mattresses. You know what I mean?
Use that UV light and you
Yeah.
find out if you got a problem there. You know what I like about the two of you, beyond the fact that your band's pretty good, it's quite good, is you look at each other before you answer a question. Is that like a consultation kind of thing? Like when you were just asked a question, Justin, you looked at Christian. When I asked a question, Christian, he respectfully looked at you, sort of like a communing kind of thing. I mean, what's that about?
I don't know. I guess
We want to make sure we're on the same
As
page.
they're doing right
Yeah.
now, exactly.
Okay, you're gonna play
No,
another
it's
song.
nice.
You're gonna play another song for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the other song?
This song is a song called Mona,
Okay.
which we put out a little while ago. We figured we'd do, when we only get 2 songs, it's fun for us to try to do a new song
Yeah.
when we can, which is one we just did. And then this one is one that's out. And
Don't go for 1 second. Well, other
Go
than
ahead.
this thing on May 10th,
May
Rockwood,
10th, yeah.
how else do people find you, your music, the stuff that you've published already? Jason, what's the, Justin, I'm sorry, what's the answer to that, Justin?
I mean, we share it as well as we can on all the social media platforms. We're most like Instagram is still
Under Winkler.
Under Winkler.
Fair
yeah.
enough.
Is it Winkler? Yeah.
Okay.
You can
We're going to
find-
hear another.
You want to rejoin? Put down your
another
headsets
song
quietly if you don't mind and join your colleagues. It'd be great. Thanks.
from Winkler, and as I said before, indie pop band, supergroup in Austin, is my understanding. They're going to be at the Rockwood Music Hall in the Back Bay on May 10th. To get tickets, you can go to rockwoodmusic.com. They have an EP on the horizon, and the members of the band are Justin Schaefers and Christian Schmidt. We just talked to them. We've also got Alex Macy on guitar, Ava Connaughton on bass, and Maddie Simpson on vocals. Here they are again, Winkler.
Why'd you have to make me so damn crazy? Alright, Mona, you know you make me wanna get up off my feet, but you're mad about these knees of mine so. Okay, Mona. I think I love you and I don't know why. I think I love you and I don't know why. I think I love you and I don't know why. I think I love you and I don't know why. So I say, Mona, I think I love you and I don't know why. You have to make me so damn crazy. I love you and I don't know why. I think I love you and I don't know
Song.
That was
really
great.
song.
You've been listening to the indie pop band Winkler. They're going to be at the Rockwood Music Hall in the Back Bay on May 10th. If you want to get tickets, you go to rockwoodboston.com. I want to introduce the band members again. Winkler, Justin Schaefer, Kristen Schmidt, Alex Macy, Ava Connaughton, and Maddie Simpson. Thank you so much. That was absolutely terrific. One more time.
Really
Winkler's going to be at the Rockwood Music Hall in the Back Bay on May 10th. If you want to get tickets and hear these guys live, guys and gals, I should say, live in person, go to rockwoodboston.com. Thank you very, very much for coming, and that was a great treat. Up next, we're going to be joined by Boston Medical Center's Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett. She's going to talk to us about the pediatrician primary care doctor shortage. And good news, I guess teenagers are not drinking and drugging as much as they used to. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.
The AG's office is dealing with a bevy of issues, including a lawsuit against the town of Milton and cracking down on youth sports betting. I'm Adam Riley. This week on Talking Politics, we sit down with Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell to discuss. Plus, a breakdown of the recent GBH News and Commonwealth Beacon poll about how Mass residents feel about the election, state politics, and more. Join me for Talking Politics tonight at 7 on GBH2.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Safety Insurance, offering a variety of home insurance products to cover your home's increased value. You can ask an independent agent about safety insurance. Safety Insurance. We'll help you manage life's storms. And the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, preserving the history of graphic communication from typewriters and presses to computers and copiers. Their expanded exhibit of rare and historic Bibles is now on view. More at museumofprinting.org.
I'm Nicole Garcia, producer for BPR, and you're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan and Jim Browdy with Live at the Library. Streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. No library on Tuesday. Marathon, whatever. I don't clean up or something. Wednesday, we're back here with the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, from 1 to 2. And on May 3rd, I don't know, what day of the week is May 3rd? Friday. Thank you. On Friday, May 3rd, we have a special BPR show, 3-hour show at UMass Boston. You're welcome to join us. We'll tell you in a couple of days where exactly it's going to be. The governor will join us. The former head of the EPA, Gina McCarthy, will join us. The newly inducted chancellor will join us, Paul English, who is funding, he's the guy from Kayak originally. He's the one that's funding all the AI stuff out there, whole bunch of things. We're joined now by Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett. She's the Vice Chair of Primary Care, Innovation, and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, Associate Professor at Boston University Medical School. Hello, Doctor.
Hello, good to see
Great
you
to
all.
see you, too.
Yeah, well, as the Vice Chair of Primary Care, as Jim just said, what better person to talk to about than the shortage of primary care physicians? Is there some plan? I mean, nobody can seem to find primary care doctors anymore. You're a rare breed.
It is an honor to be part of that rare breed, but I'm so glad you are asking. There was actually a terrific op-ed by the editorial board in the Globe yesterday that specifically, I think there's a lot of work, going towards solutions, because at this point we are all deeply aware of the problem. Anybody here who's tried to get into primary care know there's a long wait. We also know
even if you have a primary care doctor,
hard to get in. I can tell you as a practice visit, right? It's like the best days that you have when you're fundraising. And they say you could actually use the funds in the way you want. So the idea is that we could actually use Medicaid dollars back for primary care training and behavioral health training, the places that we've been talking again and again that we know there's a massive shortage across the country, but especially in Massachusetts.
Well,
can we stay on this thing for a second? We were talking to Phil Eng before from the T, and he's very diplomatic in addition to courageous and I think believing in transparency to come here. we asked them the question, and we learned this from Commonwealth Beacon magazine, why are we like virtually the last city in the country to have low-income fares for low-income people? He said, well, I wasn't here for that, and we're focusing on the future. You read this editorial in the Globe. Let me read what you just said. Massachusetts today is one of only 7 states that does not use Medicaid money. Let's go a little further. For this purpose you talked about. Among the 10 states with the most teaching hospitals and physicians' residents, we're the only state that doesn't use Medicaid money to support graduate medical education. And they talk about how the fact that 14 years ago we had fiscal problems. That was 14 years ago.
That's correct.
We have a physician shortage, primary care. We have a pediatrician shortage.
Yes.
Get with the damn program. I mean, really.
Yeah. So there's a group of us leaders in primary care across the state who are actively working with the state legislator, and especially Senator Cindy Friedman, who's been a terrific advocate for us. And we're actually working very hard. Actually, there's legislation in right now. It's called Primary Care for You, which specifically looks to double the investment in primary care, lower some of the administrative burden, and improve the pipeline. So those are really the 3 buckets. But happily, there's some motion towards that.
I'll believe it when I see it. Not your end, but the legislature.
No, I hear you.
Okay, so even if it turns out the pipeline increases, there are people like you who decide, despite the fact that I can make twice as much if I went into a specialty X or Y.
That's correct.
I've chosen to do this for I mean, people know you from the radio. You're that kind of person. But I'm not being critical of others. You can make twice as much with a lot less stress, fewer patients. So even if the pipeline increases, what's the incentive for that person to stay in it? Exactly.
Absolutely. I mean, I can tell you the people I work shoulder to shoulder with, we have to ask ourselves this question every day. You know, ultimately it comes down to what kind of relationship you can have with your patients and the way that you can feel like you're making a difference. And part of what I know we were talking about is this idea of trust. How do you rebuild trust in medicine? How do you rebuild it in the relationship? And part of it is primary care is the cornerstone, but we also know study after study shows us that primary care is the only specialty that improves health outcomes and improves health equity and lowers costs. So if you believe in what you're doing, you want to be in primary care, but we desperately need more support to get more people into it.
Okay, how much of this is about the fact that so many people who are primary care physicians or pediatricians are women?
The low pay?
Yeah.
I think that is a very good question. I think it's also a question about training and the way that training doesn't support a balance, I think, to your point. For women who, tend to, again, be on the relational part. Obviously, it's a lot of men, too. But I don't think it's just about that. I also think it's deeply about the way that we set up our pay structure, which is absolutely about pay for performance or pay for procedure, right? So I actually thought there was a great quote in one of those editorials in one of the articles saying, I could talk to somebody for half an hour about congestive heart failure, their diabetes, their homelessness, and I would get paid less than if I spent 10 minutes freezing off 3 warts. And that's actually true, right? So once we start to change the incentives, then we know that we can have, it's not about gender. It's just about the way that we're incentivizing payment. And back to your point, Jim, I think this is part of why Massachusetts is so asleep on the ball. We say we believe in health equity. We say
asleep at the wheel.
Asleep at the wheel and behind the ball, the 8 ball.
That's right.
Very good. The mixed metaphors is
well, we got the point.
Yes. So in part because we've been so good at training specialists here, and one of the ways that we have continued to support our medical mecca is by getting a lot of money from procedures. And so how do you actually shift the incentive?
One last thing about this. We had this discussion with Art Kaplan the other day in the context of pediatricians. And beyond the fact that we've read so much about mental health issues, anxiety, depression, with young people exploding, and not just COVID, post-COVID, during COVID, but post-COVID too, We understand the reimbursement rate is less, but it's so ass backwards because any idiot knows, and I am in that category because I know nothing about medicine except as a customer, is if you don't address the problem early on, the problem explodes and becomes, so why don't insurers understand that even if they don't care about human beings, if they care about their bottom line, nailing the problem in a kid's early years is going to save you zillions of dollars in the adult's years.
It's this idea of how do we've talked about this again and again and again, is, you know, this long-term perspective, this long return on investment, which is not how we're set up, right? And how do you see the long-term vision and support it with what you're doing now? I do think that mass health and Medicaid and the mass health exactly and mass health waiver, the 1115 is going towards there. So putting more money back into preventive care, into mental health. So there is some movement, and there, you know, I know you're saying I'll wait to see it, you know, but there has been incremental change. What I am very happy about is that people are finally speaking out about it, and it's not just us at the front lines, because it's a consumer problem.
By the way, Michael Curry, who's our other guest who deals with wonderful issues like this, important issues, League of Community Health Centers, is all over this editorial. You should check it out, and he'll be with us next week.
You know, just a quick aside, you know, it must be so, I know you could kill somebody and that would be bad, but you think about the anesthesiologists that come in, you know, they're going to give you the IV or whatever they're going to give you before you have your operation. Then they just hang around and make sure you don't die on the operating table. But I mean, no muss, no fuss, little shot. And then, I mean, that they make more money than pediatricians and primary care physicians is really annoying. If you have zero personality, zero social skills.
I in no way want this to be about elevating one and diminishing the other, in part because
I think you should make
for
more.
My incredible anesthesiologist colleagues. That being said, you know, it's not just about paying providers, it's about encouraging an entire system change. And it's not about doctors, it's about getting more nurses in, it's about getting more case managers in, it's about getting more therapists in, it's about getting more nutritionists in. Like, we're just one part of a much larger issue that needs to be fixed.
I still think you should make more than the anesthesiologist.
Okay, can we talk about another nightmare?
Just me.
This conversation started when we were lucky enough to have Anthony Fauci on with us, and I was sure he'd avoid the question, and didn't at all, about the lack of belief in science, the lack of trust in public health, etc. And Tom Frieden has this piece at Stat News. Stat is just fabulous.
So good.
Stat News. However, he's the former head of the CDC. He says there are three things to do, two of which I don't think you can disagree with based on recent history. One, improved communication. That's obvious. So many mixed messages and whatever. Two, fewer mandates, even though personally, that's not my position. I understand politically, that's where you got to go. But this last point to me is so undercut by history. He says we got to make progress on public health things that people care about. Well, what better example of progress on public health can be how many lives we saved despite the homicidal behavior of Donald Trump during COVID. If that didn't convince people in this country that public health, even belated public health, works, what are you and others like you going to do? They're going to convince people, a la Tom Frieden, that public health is to be trusted.
Well, so first of all, I do think that having the opportunity for people who are actually doing the work to communicate what their work is, right? So I don't think there's enough education or support in people to kind of translate what's happening at the lab bench or what's happening in their sort of ecosphere to then why does it matter, right? And so more translational research, doing more research that matters to people. The NIH is doing some of this, and we know P. Corey, other funders is doing, moving some of the research to make it something that matters. But I think part of it is also, how do you take things that we know happen, for instance, in terms of Republican states and the number of deaths that happen from COVID-19 versus Democratic states, and stop making it so political. Like, just take some of the facts. We know that there's leanings politically, but how do you extract big kind of umbrella sweeping statements from saying, this is the data, please interpret it however you want in terms of Democratic leanings, Republican leanings. Don't be so kind of quick to assume it's because of a person's belief. And actually just work on, the better communication with it. And part of it is, actually, I've been really interested in, how do we, with public radio, how do we actually start to have, not here, but lots of places, true dialogue that's not so quick to put people in camps. And I think that's part of what we need to be doing with data, is we extract the data from all of the, big, hard feelings we have towards one another and allow people to digest it on their own.
You're too nice for the show, Katherine Gergen Barnett. We're talking to Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett.
But it's really difficult when you have people like Robert F. Kennedy, who is
That's a really good point.
Is getting a lot of play and could be a spoiler in this election.
Yes.
He's polling in double digits in some of these places across the country. He claims he's not a vaccine denier, but I think he sort of is a vaccine denier.
Yep.
And
as is his running mate, by the way.
Yeah. There are these, and then you read about these measles outbreaks. I mean,
I'm just saying that's not the scientist's job.
Right.
I'm saying the scientist's job is to do the science and give the data and translate the data in a way that matters and try not to let it be politicized. I think what happened with the CDC reporting to the White House and what they talked about in this article, which I think is so true, is part of the reason people lost trust in the CDC is it became first a Trump issue and then a Biden issue.
Yeah.
And the fact is that should have been a separate sphere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think those press conferences with Trump early on when he had Deborah Birx next to him, you kind of lost faith in those pretty quickly.
It inherently became political.
Remember before he got in trouble and Cuomo would have the press
the
conference?
The
counterpoint of vaccines were a good idea and don't use bleach, etc.
It's amazing he'd have the press conferences. How did he have time after groping women? He had time to go to the... Okay, one last thing for you. The good news, Marjorie said this in the tease of the segment, is teen drug use is down. Cigarettes, marijuana, alcohol, etc. So the maybe not the flip side. Are you aware there's a question on the ballot that would decriminalize a certain natural psychedelics, including things like psilocybin in Massachusetts?
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
That is a good question.
Whenever somebody says a good question, they're saying, what do I say?
I was not expecting that question.
What am I going to say? Oh, time's up, unfortunately. Thank you.
Let me just say this. There is not a lot of data to support that psilocybin is addictive. There's not. In the same way that there's very good evidence around alcohol and nicotine, there is also, I will say, a good body of research that has come out with literature to support some of these in terms of mental health. That being said, I actually get very worried about anybody doing anything without supervision. And I think this is really important. I think, psychiatry has made great bounds to be doing medications that are outside of what are the norms of sort of typical psychiatric medicines for depression that's really hard to treat, et cetera. But I do think that as we're looking at the landscape of what people are using, especially teens, we need to think about, well, if there are other things coming on the market, how is that going to kind of impact what we already know in terms of high anxiety levels, high depression levels, high loneliness? And part of it is how can we bring people actually back together, connecting back together, and have it be that if there are other things on the ballot, that we can actually be in dialogue about how that's going to be impacting, our teens and our families. And
so what's the answer
to
my question?
The answer is
we'll give you a month. We'll give you a couple of weeks.
with good guardrails. I think it's an interesting thing to
You want to
explore.
understand, though, two things. One, I don't understand how people argue that it's fine for someone like you to prescribe an opioid, but it's not fine for somebody in their judgment to decide this would address the mental health
That's
needs.
what I'm saying.
That's one. Two, same with marijuana. We talked the other day about the legalization 8 years ago when the legislature didn't have the courage to do it, so the people had to do it themselves. One of the things I understand that maybe you do is Joe Biden has spoken about taking marijuana, removing it as a Schedule I drug, which is the same classification as heroin. And one of the reasons there's so little research, which is one of the things that Art Kaplan rails about all the time, on even marijuana, is because it's a Schedule I drug. Why doesn't Biden, he supports it from what I understand, descheduling it or moving it down the schedule. Why doesn't he just do it? He doesn't need congressional approval. Do you know?
I am not sure. I think he probably thinks it's a bit of a hot button. Still,
even marijuana.
Even marijuana. I think there's still a lot of stigma around it, and a lot that's unknown. And I think, like we've talked about, several times today, there's a lot of concern about broaching things that feel political, even when they're not, for fear of losing the vote. And so we need to separate science from politics and do our work.
Doctor, we're almost out of time here, but really quickly, do you think there's something in this this diagnosing people with Alzheimer's who are healthy, no symptoms, with a simple blood test? Is there something here?
Yeah. Okay, so for those of you who are here or listening, what Marjorie is talking about is that there's now a blood test that's very specific and very kind of sensitive. In other words, it's a very good blood test for detecting what we call amyloid. So amyloid is the protein that can build up for people who have Alzheimer's. So the idea is that you could actually detect amyloid in somebody's bloodstream before they even have symptoms, which is incredibly dangerous because actually there was a Dutch study in 2015 that showed, up to 10% of people who are 50 years old have this amyloid in their blood and may never get symptoms. 20% at 65 and goes up, right? So I think about this actually very much similar to the prostate cancer.
That's exactly what I said to Marjorie this morning.
And so, we used to think, okay, let's just screen everybody. And then we realized that a lot of people can have elevated PSA or the prostate, antigen in their blood, and it will never cause any problems.
Okay.
And yet we were driving up everybody's anxiety. We were doing tons of procedures. And so now we no longer do that. We do that if you have symptoms. We don't just do it routinely. And so I think that probably, I hope that the needle is going to swing, that we say, this can only be done if somebody already has mild cognitive impairment. And then it'll be a good indicator for us about what to do next.
Katherine Gergen Barnett, next time you're here, we're going to ask you your position on every ballot question in every state
I
in
can't
America.
wait.
So
she's trying to separate the politics from the science, and we're dragging it back in.
It's health policy. Good to see you, Doctor.
You too.
Thank you very much. We've been speaking with Dr. Katherine Gergen Barnett, Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, Associate Professor at Boston University Medical School as well. Thank you so much, Doctor. See you again soon. Up next, our food policy analyst, Corby Kummer, zooms in. He's going to tell us about one of the best restaurants in France, which is an all-you-can-eat buffet, Jim. Think about that. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, the organizers of the Boston Marathon are facing a lawsuit over discrimination claims dating back to last year's race. Meantime, local leaders are offering safety tips ahead of this Monday's race. And making money off of surplus solar power is usually a perk for homeowners. For this week's Joy Beat, we'll look at a community co-op aiming to get the benefits of solar to disadvantaged communities. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And The Lyric Stage, presenting The Drowsy Chaperone. This bubbly love letter to musical theater includes mix-ups, mayhem, and a wedding or two. Now through May 12th at Lyric Stage Boston. Tickets at lyricstage.com. And Bernadine Sung Magazine with Compass Real Estate, serving buyers and sellers throughout Greater Boston. Learn more at homesbybernadine.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. No library next Tuesday. Wednesday, we're here at the library with the Attorney General from 1 to 2. Joined now in Zoom by Corby Comer. Corby is the Executive Director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, Senior Editor at the Atlantica, Senior Lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Hey there, Corby.
Hey there, Jim. Hey there, Marjorie.
Nice
hey,
to
great
see you.
to see you, Corby Comer. So somehow I don't think of France and French people with all their things about language and manners and table sittings and all that, reveling over an all-you-can-eat buffet, but apparently I'm wrong. Hottest restaurant around?
You know, I was fascinated by this piece. It's 5 hours south of Paris by train in a small city called Narbonne. It's the hottest ticket in France, and it's 4 rooms, themed rooms, completely full of the most gargantuan buffet you've ever seen. What's different about it from all other buffets that Jim is likely obsessed with and does a world tour to frequent is that it's all French food. And to me, this exemplifies, first of all, the dangerous, maybe U.S.-led cruise ship Las Vegas buffet craze infecting France. But more than that, the chef and the owner of the restaurant is saying that French people have lost track of their own national cuisine with the internationalization of cuisine. And this is to try to reconnect people with their roots of French cuisine. That's why I found it particularly fascinating, and I myself would like to go, because you get like a course in French food if you go there.
By the way, I want to repeat, this is the hottest restaurant in France. This is not just, oh, by the way, people really like an all-you-can-eat buffet, which is what it is. It is in the country, as you were suggesting, I think, that values its perspective
Decorum.
on food and wine and all those kind of things, probably higher than anywhere else in the world. This is the hottest thing. You need to wait 6 months for a reservation to get into this place.
Did you see the dress code?
I did.
Yeah.
Tell people.
Well, you can't go in if you show up in elastic waist pants to expand while you're shoving all this
Well, you shouldn't be able to go anywhere if you have elastic waist
So no sweatpants, no
pants.
undershirts, no sport jerseys, flip-flops. I mean,
What amazes you about that? It's like a restaurant.
Because I think a lot of people go to all.
It's not a clam shack.
All you eat buffets go prepared to eat a lot with the expand waist.
Oh, that's
pants.
a good point, actually.
Yes.
That's a very good
Thank
point.
you. You have several of those.
I may or may not, actually. It's funny you should say that.
Yeah.
It's called Le Grand Buffet. Is that not the Le Grand Buffet?
So
is
Corby,
what the name.
so people go in their finest clothing apparently to eat too much food.
Well, you know, when you've waited this long, but the owner of it, I think a guy named Bernard Privat, was saying that people don't go through that many oysters. It doesn't seem to inspire a lot of eating contests. And he hopes that they're going to order more expensive bottles of wine because it's not that expensive. I was shocked at like 59 euros. That's nothing, unbelievably low. But he's trying to make up for this kind of loss leader on expensive liqueurs. And he offers in the middle of it what's called the Le Trou Normand, which is the Norman hole, which is a way of having apple brandy, a specialty of Normandy where apples grow, so that you can increase your appetite and settle your stomach in the middle of a meal. So if you go to a huge French feast, you'll often have this Trou Normand. But, you know, it's showing that French people are distant from their roots, that there's a kind of Disneyland of French food.
No,
that they
come
have
on.
To approach it like a theme park.
Don't do that. Disneyland, did you ever eat at Disneyland or Disney World? It's like eating out of a can for like $40 an item.
That's true.
Yes, it is. The food is inedible.
Okay.
This sounds totally great and high-end. By the way, for a fairly affordable price, Corby Comer, no?
Yeah, I mean, it's 52 euros and 90 centimes, which is just incredibly low. That's probably $65, $70.
Yeah, and you can stay there for a weekend if you're really into that kind of thing. So it's called Le Grand Buffet. Check it out.
Grand Buffet.
If I could go tomorrow, I would.
If you, by any chance, probably not, but I'll ask
Maybe he
anyway.
has.
Have you ever been to a state dinner, Corby Comer?
I bet he has.
No, he hasn't.
All right, but can I name drop? Because
Sure.
we had dinner with friends. She was seated between two presidents, and he was seated next to the prime minister at this dinner.
Oh,
Of Japan.
my gosh.
Of Japan.
Yeah, the other Tuesday nights.
Oh, who was it?
Their name are Linda and Stuart Resnick, and they were listed as being at the head table, so it's not.
Wow.
Jesus.
Wow.
How'd they like the meal?
They loved the meal, and they said the food was surprisingly good, really good. Everything was perfect and served very fast. There was no wasted time. That everyone there was incredibly gracious, and it was incredibly efficiently, graciously done.
Well, you know what I love about these, how this is Japan State Dinner. So they combine the food from Japan, the food from the United States, and all the flowers and stuff. And this is really designed right down to every T being crossed. I should have a better analogy, a food analogy. But anyway, it's very carefully done, which is pretty neat.
There's a wonderful book by a pal named Alex Prudhomme, who wrote, he was the grandnephew of Paul Child, Julia's husband, and he wrote a number of books with Julia Child about my life in France, for example, and others. He wrote a book just about presidential food in the White House with a big focus on the history of state dinners.
Yeah.
So it's like how important the symbolism is and how really important. Another mutual friend of our friends who used to work at the White House and was saying, 80% of people travel from across the country and around the world to attend these dinners. No one turns down an invitation to a state dinner. It's the most formal occasion, and yet, as our friends and others I've spoken to who've been to these dinners will say, it's the true meaning of etiquette, which is to make you comfortable, at ease, not tilted, not afraid, not formal, not nervous. Everyone was really happy to be there and had a relaxed and lovely time.
By the way, let me be clear. If anybody's listening who was contemplating inviting me or Marjorie to a state dinner, I would say I am available with one exception. If I have a reservation for Le Grand Buffet that particular night, I will be unable to attend. So, we know how horrible plastic is. And who did that special? Nova Frontline we did a few years ago.
It was
There was a fabulous special produced by GBH about how horrible plastic is, which we knew. But then they talked about how, despite we all realizing how horrible it is, what it's doing to the ocean in particular, what it's doing to sea life, that the amount of plastic that's about to be produced in the world is about to grow exponentially. Then we read this thing about produce being packed in plastic, and I finished this story not knowing what to think, and that's why you're here, Corby. It seems to me the story is saying, as horrible as it is that plastic is used to keep produce fresh because plastic is dangerous, has a long shelf life, et cetera, the flip side is, I think, what's even worse is degrading produce and what that does to the environment if it's not preserved in something like plastic. So I thought for a minute, but I'm not sure I'm right, that their conclusion was the importance of keeping produce fresh is worth the environmental cost of using plastic. Did I miss the point?
No, it is complex, and you've summarized it really well. I think that a statistic that's probably stopped both of us was a Swiss study in 2021 showed that each rotting cucumber thrown away the equivalent environmental impact of 93 plastic cucumber wrappers. So, maybe the wrappers are really a good thing, and because all of us know what it's like to have a rotting cucumber. So that was really arresting. But there are so many ways the Biden administration is trying to reduce waste of all kinds, especially environmental waste and food. And so the article by Kim Severson in the Times has many, many different kinds of alternative packaging created from orange peels, created from paper. But until there are environmental regulations, as there are in Spain where there are taxes, France is starting to crack down on them. The European Union is going to come down on using too much plastic. That's what eliminates plastic packaging, when the government is regulating it.
Yeah, Spain has a tax.
What is that again?
Spain has a tax.
On using plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as you're pointing out, Jim, unless the paper or alternatives have anti-rotting and food-preserving traits, you might not be having the best trade-off for reducing rotting and methane gas emission in landfills.
What do you do, by the way?
I try to buy as little produce as I need. You know, I'm very proud. I haven't thrown out anything rotting in quite a while because we've been talking about food waste so long on this program. But it's mostly a question of only buying when you think in the next few days you're going to be able to use something.
By the way, can I just add one thing? This relates to our conversation about the state dinner for the Japanese Prime Minister. I think it was last night or the night before, whatever it was. Our GBH colleague Emily reminds us there's a classic GBH moment from the Johnson administration when Julia Child went to the state dinner with then Prime Minister Sato and Mrs. Sato of Japan. And you can find that at the American Archive of Public Broadcasting. It's called White House Red Carpet with Julia Child at americanarchive.org. That's great. Thank you. That's fabulous.
That sounds really neat.
By the way, I sat next to her at a dinner at a benefit for the Culinary Arts Department for Cambridge, Rindge, and Latin High School. What do you think of that?
I think that's pretty cool.
She was wildly impressed by my culinary skills, by the way. Not.
So I have a question for you, Corby. You know, a lot of cities and towns are starting composting, or they're hiring companies, and you can pay them. The one in Brooklyn, you have to pay them $11 a month, which is not bad. Are these legit deals where they're taking this food and
as opposed to what?
Well, as opposed to it going to landfills and rotting. I mean, the composting, that they're doing the right thing. I mean, I talked to you a lot about those, like at Whole Foods, they say, you know, they rate the humane treatment of the meat or the antibiotics, et cetera. We're not being fooled by these composting companies, I hope, are we?
I don't care if we are, for this reason.
Why?
Because if you become conscious enough of throwing all your food scraps into a little metal cylinder on your sink that, you know, has holes in it that keeps it aired out, but we hope not smelling up your kitchen too much, you're becoming aware, and it's a really useful exercise for you to try to lower the amount of food that you're wasting yourself. I certainly hope it's being, you know, brought to a happier end. And it's less environmentally destructive than just putting it in landfill. That would be great. But what's most important is a whole city coming together to make people conscious of what they're wasting.
Yeah, Boston, you can compost in Boston, you know.
Cambridge too.
Yeah, so I mean...
Do you use it?
I do, I love it.
You really do?
Yes, well, it's so easy, and it makes you feel
Don't the rats get in there, or what?
No, you have it in a plastic thing.
Oh, with the top on it?
Yes, with the top on it.
Oh.
And they come and pick it up. But the great thing is, you do become conscious of how much food you waste, and I was stunned by how much food I was wasting, and you do waste less, and you feel less horrible about what you do waste.
Wow, it's a very upbeat story there,
I thought so,
I want to put in a plug. Alex Prudhomme's book is called Dinner with the President, and everything you want to know about state dinners and how many people pilfer silver, matchbooks, and menus.
I have a feeling you want to avoid this question, but let's go back to that state dinner. How did your friends get to sit between two presidents at the state dinner the other night?
They are wondering the same thing.
Good for them.
What are they, huge donors or something? I mean, what are they?
No, as they say, we've been generous, but not as generous as other people at that dinner.
Wow.
They're still scratching their heads, but they had like the best time ever.
Well, it's pretty amazing. Jeff Bezos was there. Do you know that?
Oh, he was?
Yes, he was.
Wow.
A lot of other people. You didn't read the list?
Was that the one with the girlfriend with the incredible dress on?
I really don't think we.
That was an incredible dress.
Yeah, you were incredible.
Well, you couldn't help
notice the dress. Well, it was hard to miss it.
Hard to miss the dress.
It was hard to miss it.
So let's move on to one more thing.
Let's move on from that, actually.
So Lunchables, they're going to kill us. Is that the bottom line? Lunchables are going to kill you. And we're giving them all to our kids, and they're in the schools, and they're having them for lunch, and this is very bad?
let me be really proud of the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Food Policy.
Oh. Great.
One of my students did her final paper last semester on the outrage of allowing Lunchables into the school lunch program, paid for by the USDA. She knew something was rotten about letting Kraft say that it was reformulating its Lunchables, a proven popular with school kids product, to fit the school lunch standards. And then this Sting study by Consumer Reports shows that the sodium levels are way high, and the shocker, they're higher than the supermarket version of Lunchables. One of the worst things about this that outraged my student was finding out that the version provided to the school lunch program was different from what was in supermarkets, because she said students and families are being hoodwinked into thinking the healthier version they're having that was formulated to meet school lunch standards is the one that they will buy in the supermarkets, whereas they're still getting the same high in sodium, high in fat version that Kraft has always marketed. And instead, Consumer Reports finds it's higher in sodium in the school lunch version than supermarkets. Really shocking.
You know, by the way, the fact, remember when we were talking to, was it Jill Shaw from the Shaw Family Foundation, how they were trying to put kitchens in individual Boston public schools so kids could actually eat high quality, locally, meaning out on the site, produce food. The fact that we can't afford to feed decent food to kids when, as we've learned from you, for a lot of kids, it's their only really nutritious meal of the day, and they're eating this crap, these Lunchables, is unbelievable.
It's like our government is trying to kill us on a bunch of fronts. They don't want the EPA to regulate water, so we don't have clean water. They don't want to regulate the air, so we have dirty air pollution. They don't want, God forbid, we do something about fossil fuels or plastic or any of these things. And God forbid, we think it's a bad idea to poison kids with high sodium and high fat in the schools. I mean, we have a problem.
Well, I can't answer that right now, but here's
what?
Let me pull back and say that in the report that Food and Society at the Aspen Institute about food as medicine research launched this week, which I know has been really the subject of your entire week, it certainly has been ours. One of the overarching points we make is that school lunch is often the healthiest food environment for many of the students getting it, a huge number of students. The school lunch program is a huge overall benefit that the U.S. government provides, and something we should applaud while trying to improve it.
Now, let me just say, before you go, I'm going to say the following.
What?
If I had mentioned the dress that Jeff Bezos' girlfriend was in, we would not post the photograph of what she was wearing at the state dinner.
The dress.
But in light of the fact that Marjorie is the one who did it, so I will not get in trouble if we post this. We are going to do that. We're going to post. And again, Marjorie raised the issue, and we have to sort of complete the circle.
Got your attention.
And you can respond in any way you want. I don't mean Corby, I mean listeners, viewers, etc. As to the appropriateness, I guess, was your point, at a state dinner. I think it's perfectly fine. So we're going to post a photograph of whatever her name is, I don't know what her name is, the girlfriend of Jeff Bezos, as he and she, he looks pretty odd too, let me tell you, entering the state dinner. Corby, it's wonderful to see you, as always. Thank you. Corby, can you see this photograph or not?
I saw it. It was posted everywhere.
What do you think? What do you think?
I think that Jeff Bezos has a very wonderful philanthropic environment saving
Thank you very much. Good answer. Nice to see you, Corby Comer. We'll talk to you soon. Or you could
also say, if you got it, flaunt it, Jim. You could say that too.
What is with you? What happened to you?
Look, I mean, she's got a pretty good figure, I guess. Wouldn't you say?
Okay, fine.
Okay, fine.
I wouldn't say anything, actually. By the way, can we say one good thing? The reason Marjorie was going, oh, wow, before you heard on the air, is there, not only does the Newsfeed Cafe have fabulous food, and they have fabulous people who work there. Today is food from this Venezuelan place, Carolicious, and we're eating it now. They're here usually on Fridays. They're here today because of the marathon. Oh, Thursdays. We're here today because of the marathon. The actual storefront is located at Aeronaut Brewing in the Food Hub in Somerville, and the food is spectacular, and thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you very much, Corby Comer.
Thank you. Thank you, Corby.
We've been speaking with food policy analyst, multiple James Beard award winner, Corby Comer, executive director of the aforementioned Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, a senior editor at The Atlantic, and a senior, we also talked about them, lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Thank you very much to Corby Comer. Up next, we're going to open up the lines to hear about what you want to hear about after all this discussion of food. The portable toilet, the porta-potty. You may have noticed, if you are anywhere near the marathon route, that there are hundreds of them. There will soon be thousands of them posted all along the route up in Hopkinton. They get a ton of them when the marathon starts. We're talking porta-potties, Jiffy John, throne depots, the portaloo, as the British say. What is your relationship, your highs and lows over your lifetime with porta-potties? That's next on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, broadcasting live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. Take a break from breaking news and join co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Herwick III for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Everything from music to movies, pop culture to poetry. We'll talk through it all on The Culture Show, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Mass Cultural Council, an independent state agency committed to supporting the vibrant creative and cultural sector of Massachusetts. Learn more at massculturalcouncil.org. And the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, preserving the history of graphic communication from typewriters and presses to computers and copiers. Their expanded exhibit of rare and historic Bibles is now on view. More at museumofprinting.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. No library on Tuesday. Back at the library next Wednesday with the Attorney General from 1 to 2. We're going to end the show with a great report from our own colleague, BPR producer Hannah Loss. She did this fabulous piece about the Herculean effort before the marathon even begins, and that would be installing 1,500 porta-potties along the race route. As soon as we hear her report, we're going to open the lines and take your calls, as Marjorie said, about your relationship with, what should we call it, the portable John. That's at right. 877-301-89.7. You can start lining up your calls right now, but first, here's Hannah's great story.
I am so excited for this.
Really?
The Boston Marathon is Monday, and Santos Ramacchia has been ready for a while now.
So these are all units that are going for the marathon. We're already prepping. It's close.
By units, he means portable toilets. You know, the blue plastic porta-potties that align the course from Hopkinton to downtown Boston.
Everybody's already talking about it. Everybody's excited.
We're gazing out across a sea of about 1,000 toilets, lined up on a dirt lot and in a warehouse in Northborough. Stramacchia is the field office manager for United Site Services here. The company has been supplying toilets to the marathon for over 3 decades.
Marjorie.
But how does the marathon know how many they'll need? Turns out, that's a special equation, and it involves the different needs at various spots along the course.
730 restrooms in Hopkinton alone.
That's Michelle Stratton. She also works here at United Site Services, managing New England accounts.
That's a lot of toilets.
Hopkinton gets the biggest batch because it sees the most people for the longest time as they wait to run. The toilets there are strategically placed, like near bus drop-offs.
You don't want people having to wait in line because once they get off the bus, they got to get to the bathroom and then start heading to the start line.
And speaking of the start line, Stramacchia says a bunch of porta-potties will go right next to it for any last-minute nervous bathroom breaks.
There's 200 minimal, 200 at the CVS parking lot of Main Street.
He says they'll also set up about 50 accessible toilets for people with disabilities and 30 four-way urinals at the start.
You got to be tall to use them, okay?
Yeah.
5'9" or shorter, you got problems. You need like a box to stand on.
As runners leave Hopkinton, they'll find 4 or 5 potties at each of the 24 hydration stations along the course, plus more at each medical tent. And we haven't even talked about toilet paper math.
Each unit gets 3 rolls in it, so we order about 256 boxes.
In grand total, there will be 1,400 porta-potties at the marathon. The math to get to this number starts with a standard calculation for live events, 1 porta-potty for every 100 people. Then that's adjusted based on other factors like the number of hours and whether there's food or alcohol at the event. The BAA has the benefit of 127 years of marathons to know just how many toilets it needs for the 30,000 runners and hundreds of volunteers. But BAA Operations Manager Will Pollard says they still use each year as a learning opportunity to tweak the calculation.
Oh, we had X amount here this year, and we needed to bump it up a little bit because there were long lines, so let's figure out how to do that.
In Northborough, this forklift will soon load the porta-potties onto trucks and flatbed trailers. Then they'll be on their way to the famous marathon route. Once they're in place, Stramakia's team puts on the finishing touches.
5 or 6 gallons of water, you put it in there, take your dye pack, you throw it in, it breaks, boom, there you go, your blue, scented, beautiful lavender water, whatever the flavor of the month is.
And a handful of elite toilets, he holds a special spot for those.
Those are the perfect units. They're all good, but those would be the best of the best, the newest ones.
Those, he said, will go by the start and finish lines, where there are the most cameras.
That's it. So as people know, GBH has a fabulous report. As GBH, as you know, GBH has a higher ed reporter, Marjorie.
Yep.
We have an education reporter.
That's
we have health reporters. That was Boston Public Radio's porta-potty reporter, Hannah Loss. You can find her full story at gbhnews.org, and it's going to play this weekend on every NPR station in America.
It's a great story.
Hannah, congratulations.
Yeah,
it's
she
great.
did a great job.
Now we're opening up the lines at 877-301-8970. By the way, nothing disgusting, or we're going to cut you off. I'm not in the mood for that. We do want to know about your relationship with the porta-potty. Are you more like me, and you would rather, how should I put this, explode than use a porta-potty, or are you like Marjorie, any port, so to speak, in a storm? 877-301-8970. Did you hear the guy that owns the company said 3 rolls of toilet paper total for each porta-potty?
That's not enough.
3 rolls?
Not nearly enough. No,
I
it
don't
should be
think
about
so.
10 rolls. But you know, Jim, if you didn't want to hear something disgusting, you probably shouldn't have chosen porta-potties.
Well, I liked Hannah's stories.
You know
I felt I had to do it.
Because the whole thing.
By the way, I'm not kidding. I want you to know that I'm not being hyperbolic here.
They're pretty gross.
Literally, I don't mean that they're pretty gross. They are very gross. And I'm sure these are wonderful. It's a wonderful company. I'm sure it's got wonderful people there. If a doctor said to me, you physically are going to explode if you don't use the porta-potty, I would choose the explosion over the porta-potty.
Listen to this from Linda in Hopkinton. And Hopkinton is the start of the race.
700 of the porta-potties.
Porta-potties of all, because, of course, people were using the lawns of homes of people in Hopkinton before this. Linda says, I have a friend who was inside a porta-potty when the company came to take it away.
That's pretty
She
great.
almost got hauled up into the truck. Oh, God.
That's a nice image. Josh in Cambridge, you are first on the Porta Potty Hour here on Boston Public Radio. If you don't like it, blame Hannah Loss. Go ahead.
Wow. Hi, Jim.
Hi.
First time, long time. I can't believe it's my first call.
By the way, Josh, before you say why you're calling, how humiliated are you that your first call is about a Porta Potty?
Oh, you know, any publicity is good publicity, man.
Okay. Go ahead. Take it away, Josh.
So, you know, these are one-day use porta potties at the event. That's not a big deal. A big deal is the porta potties that you see when you go to a hippie music festival for an entire weekend.
Oh, my God. I can't.
Entire weekend.
Have you done that?
I have. Unfortunately, I have.
And?
It's a nightmare. You know, it's one thing when it's full. It's another thing when the pile inside comes up.
Okay, Josh, thank you.
Okay.
Excellent first call. Sorry to hear you had that experience, but thank you for making your first call. We hope you make another one about War and Peace or something like that in the future. You know what a friend of ours just texted me about?
What?
You know who did the state dinner that we were just talking to Corby about?
Who?
Brian Raffinelli from right here in Boston.
Brian Raffinelli does all the gorgeous stuff.
He does indeed.
He's such a talented guy. But by the way, I've been to weddings.
Porta potties?
They've had really nice porta potties. I mean, they can make them really nice if they want to.
I don't think these are in that category.
No, well, there's 1,400.
Well, they have the VIP ones.
They have VIP porta potties?
Well, didn't you hear in her report? They're VIP ones at certain locations, yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know there were VIP ones. I just know there's 1,400 of them, so they couldn't all be fancy-dancy ones. Mark in the car. What do you think, Mark?
Hey, Mark.
Well, I've been a runner for 30 years now.
Oh.
In any case, runners look at, when you show up at a race, runners look at porta potties kind of the way like wedding guests look at the food. Like that's the first thing they judge is, are there enough of them? It's like, you look around and it's like you park your car and then you're looking around. It's like, where's the porta potties? How many? And then you look at the line, and it's kind of hilarious. But it's like I've been on both sides of where I've also helped organize some races. But it's always a kind of crazy thing, and and the whole timing thing of I was just at a little 5K this weekend with a friend, and the same thing. It's like you look at your watch, how much time before the race, and then it's like, when can I get in line? When it's like it's this mental math of your own body, and you're trying to figure out like, okay, you get that last run in, but it's a big deal. And
yeah, I get in early if you don't mind my giving advice, even though you seem to know a lot about it. Mark, thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
Here's a dilemma.
What's that?
This is an unnamed person, but they say, I've almost lost my phone in the porta potty.
That's a problem.
I know I wouldn't hesitate to reach in there, though, no matter how gross. What would I do without my phone?
I would say there's a forward response to that. Get a new phone. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? What's a phone, like $500 or $1,000 now? You're doing that? You're going to reach in and get that baby? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it's something we should all consider, and we should be sure that we have our phone safely
pocket,
tucked away before we get involved to anything like this.
That's pretty
My
horrible.
college roommate went to Woodstock. There weren't enough porta potties there. They were so full you had to stand up and hover above the seat.
That's really nice. So, Rob, I'm really glad we're talking about this, too. But Hannah's piece is fabulous, so what else could we do? Rob and JP, what's your deal?
Yeah, so in 1998, I went to the Gay Games in Amsterdam, and they had these great toilets where 4 men could urinate at the same time.
Oh, nothing better than that.
And have privacy, and you never had to go actually inside. And I've never seen these devices in the U.S., but super efficient, enough privacy, and 4 men could go at once. It was the best design I've ever seen.
Wait a second. I don't mean, how did 4 men, I understand there are 4 urinals.
Sure.
But how are they segregated from each other?
It was one urinal. Yeah, it was like a cross piece. So each person had one of the 4 corners, and there was a little privacy between each corner, and you never had to go inside. So you could pee outdoors, have privacy, and 4 men could use one porta potty at once.
Okay, well, the women are sort of screwed, if you know what I mean.
Our intrepid porta potty reporter, that would be Hannah Loss, who did this piece, has just weighed in to tell us that it is called, what Rob was just describing, is called a 4-way cross unit.
It is.
And they have them at the marathon. Thank you very much, porta potty reporter.
How do you think Hannah's family feels that she now has an expertise in porta potties?
From coast to coast.
Oh, what does your daughter, your niece, your cousin do? Oh, she's the reporter at Boston Public Radio on porta potties.
Call up all the cousins, aunts and uncles, and tell them to listen to the story. My daughter's got a porta potty special on, 4 minutes long, all from Massachusetts.
By the way, the thing, there is, as you said before, I think I was at the same wedding that you were, or maybe I've been to another wedding, I was the same thing. There are high-end porta potties.
That's exactly what Hannah's parents did. She said,
good.
My daughter's making her national debut.
But there are high-end porta potties. I mean, the marathon, which is obviously a wonderful and spectacular event, why don't they spend a little extra and make them all VIP porta potties rather than these disgusting ones?
Jim, I don't know. I don't know why they don't.
Why don't you check it out
But
or
a United States Postal Service worker, a male letter carrier, in other words, he says he considers them a crucial tool in his work-life experience. Very few businesses on his route, and he depends on construction being done in houses. So he can use the Throne Depot, as they call it.
Is that the name of a company?
Yes, I've seen a lot of those around. Remember, we were down at the inaugural of Donald Trump.
Unfortunately.
And they had the Don's Johns.
I do remember. We took our pictures in front of Don's Johns.
We thought that kind of captured
That was the highlight of the 4 years, I thought,
yes,
don't you think?
That's right. And
by the way, that's a true story. We did go to Don's Johns.
They were Don's
We didn't
Johns.
use them. We stood outside them.
That's right. I don't know why if he thought that was good that they called them Don's Johns, but in any case, they did down
It's obviously making a buck off them,
now,
don't you think?
This isn't exactly about porta potties. It's about toilet paper, but it's close enough because I love Seinfeld, and we have a clip from Seinfeld here
where
Elaine asks a woman in the stall next to her, a lot of us have been there, if they can spare a square of toilet paper.
You can't spare it? No, there's not enough to spare. Well, I don't need much. Just 3 squares will do it. I'm sorry, I don't have 3 squares now, if you don't mind. 3 squares? You can't spare 3 squares? No, I don't have a square to spare. I can't spare a square.
The 877-301-8970. As we've said before, there's almost nothing we talk about at the end of the show that either Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm has not done a segment on.
Yeah. Is there a final show on?
Yeah, but do not say what it is, because I'm not caught. Well, I've watched part of the season. I haven't watched the final show.
Okay.
But yes, it aired Sunday night. Diane in Maine, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We're talking, sadly, about porta-potties. Hi there.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I think if you said, can you hear me, we can.
Yep.
Sorry.
I'm kidding.
Yes, I just went Monday up to Jackman, Maine to see the total eclipse.
Oh, great.
Oh.
And I was hesitant about going because mainly because of the porta potty situation. It was either going to be that or go in the woods.
Of course.
And I didn't know if I was up for it. And my cousin talked me into going, saying, well, at least you're in the middle of nowhere up in Jackman, Maine.
Excellent
if you have to go in the woods, it's better than going to a more populated place where you have to hunt for a porta potty.
So do you feel the need to tell us what you did, or do you not?
Well, yeah, no, I'm telling you, I went up there and I used the porta potties there, and they were halfway decent.
What does halfway decent mean exactly, without a huge amount of detail?
You go into a porta potty and you see everyone else's business there.
Okay,
but the bottom line is there was plenty of toilet paper every time, and because I did that, I got to experience one of the greatest moments of my life.
Beautiful end of the call. Thank you. That was great, Diane. Thank you. Is this your picture? So, as you know, Jamie, as we said repeatedly, lied and called in sick on Monday so that he could, I shouldn't say lied, he was sick on Monday, allegedly. So he went to Canada, and to see the thing, and it sounds like it's pretty great. He actually took a photograph of a heated porta potty in Canada, and I'm really proud of you. You say you refused to use it for reasons of principle. Good for you.
You know what,
Good
though?
for you.
I bet the Canadian porta potties were beautiful. I once
Look
drove
at it.
across
It's not
Canada.
beautiful.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It looks pretty good. That's the outside, Jim. It looks pretty good
I
from the
understand
outside.
what it is.
But I remember going across Canada. You go to the bathrooms, a lot of rest stops in the United States of America, and they're often disgusting. Canadian public restrooms are gorgeous, so you could have taken a chance there.
What are you talking about?
It's true.
When were you in a Canadian restroom?
I drove cross country.
When was that? Like 50 years ago?
No, it wasn't 50 years ago.
80 years ago? When was it?
120 years ago.
I mean, that is the
I rode
most
a
ridiculous
stagecoach
thing I ever heard in my life.
Yeah, it wasn't that long. About 30 years ago.
No, it wasn't.
It was too. They were gorgeous. Yeah, they were. They are absolutely
Tell
gorgeous.
me a town you used the porta potty in Canada. One town.
Quebec.
See, let me tell you something. If you're watching a streaming, when Marjorie doesn't make eye contact with me, it means she's making up the answer, which she just is.
It's one of those
she's
states
looking like this.
It's right on
They're
the
not
border.
states. They're provinces.
They're states in the United States. They're on the border, and you go back and forth between Canada and the United States.
You use the bathroom there?
No, but you kind of go over them. Maybe St. Louis something or other.
St. Louis, whatever. Yeah.
Leo from Sutton.
That's a
thank
great
you for
story
calling.
there, Marjorie.
It's
Thank
a true
you for
story,
that.
Jen.
I don't think so.
You're calling me a liar once again.
I'm not calling you a liar. I'm saying it never happened.
I'm very intimate with the restrooms
Bet you
all
are.
across Canada, right from Vancouver right across.
Okay.
Leo from Sutton, thank you for
calling. Hey,
calling.
Leo, what's your deal?
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hey.
So I was racing the Ironman race about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm about 10 hours into the race. I've done a 2.4-mile swim, 112 miles on the bike, and I'm 18 miles into the run. And I got to go. I got to go fiercely. So there's a porta potty. I go into the porta potty. I do my thing. Takes a couple of minutes. And I can't get up off the seat. My legs have started to cramp. I have no strength left.
That's pretty good.
I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I'm about 15 seconds away from just banging the door open and screaming for somebody to pull me off the can when I see this huge handle on the side. And so I was able to lift myself off the seat with some small amount of dignity left, get dressed, and finish the race.
That is a beautiful story there, Leo.
That's a good
How
one.
many Ironmans have you, whatever, how many have you done of those things?
I only did one.
And how'd that feel when you finished? I can't even, how did that feel?
It was incredible. I ended up finishing in under 12 hours, and my target was under 13, so I felt amazing.
Wow, plus you got up off the porta-potty by yourself. That's another amazing thing.
Yeah.
Leah, excellent story. Thanks for sharing it. We appreciate it.
You know, one of the texters says Jerry Seinfeld also has a bit about porta-potties in his 2020 stand-up, in which he says, by the way, never marry anyone who comes out of one of those porta-potties and says, it's not that bad in there.
That's a pretty great line.
Yeah, that's a pretty good
That
line.
is really funny. 877-301-8097. Let's go to Exeter, where Jeff is on the phone. Hello, Jeff.
Hey, how are you guys? Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for making it. Welcome.
So I worked in a power company in New York City under federal regulations, and we got drug tested on random numerical systems. So one day there's contractors on the site, and I come in and use one of the porta-potties instead of going into the building where we normally go. This thing, you could have piles of anything down in that toilet. This guy must have smoked a pound of weed. I'm sitting there and I'm saying, I got to go. I got 6 cups of coffee in me. I got to go. With that, I have to say this. I was terrified the next week and a half that I'd be drug tested and sent away or fired.
That's a very good point.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously you survived, yes?
Yeah, hey, who was this guy and why didn't I know him before I got the job?
Hey, Jeff, thanks for the call. By the way, construction workers, that's a very good point. I bet you right behind us, they're setting up the infrastructure, needless to say, for Monday's marathon. In fact, they look like they're significantly through the project.
Yeah.
I bet you there are a million porta-potties out here, don't you think?
I haven't seen any porta-potties.
Well, where the
but
hell
I'm
are they going? Lennox?
Well, I don't know. I'm not organizing the race.
No,
and I
nor
don't
am
know.
I, actually,
But we
Margie.
do
It's
have
amazing.
the big stadium outside. The
Stadium?
What do you call that thing?
Seats.
Yeah, it's seats, but it's a
called
special
seats.
kind of seats for the finish line. We're right
Yeah.
on the finish line here,
We are on
which
the
is
finish line.
pretty exciting. A lot of the runners stay at the Lennox, and you see
Yeah.
them coming in. You can tell that they're runners.
You can tell
Yes.
they're runners.
Ken from Newton, what do you think, Ken?
Hello, Ken from Newton.
Hi, this is my second call, and I want to say that my whole family really loved you guys. But
You're
my
terrific.
10-year-old daughter, she was listening, and she said, wow, the guy really interrupts the woman a lot. So
Well, we love your 10-year-old anyway.
We love you, Ken, and your 10-year-old.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, Ken.
I'm
She
gonna
shouldn't be
bring her down
listening
to
to
the
adult
library.
radio, but go ahead.
I'm going to bring her down to the library so she can tell you in person.
I wish
anyway,
you would.
Jim,
Yeah.
I think you can get over this. You just got to remember, it's like mountain climbing. You can't look down. You just close the lid and you use the urinal.
Well, the problem is I'm not mountain climbing either. So maybe you're right, Ken. I really can't. I've tried, but I really can't bring myself to do it. We hope to meet you and your kid. Ken, thank you very much for the call. We appreciate it.
Apparently, there's a porta-potty company in Situate called Jean's Latrines. How
That's
do you
pretty
like
cute,
that one?
actually.
And someone is wondering whether Don's Johns at Trump's inaugural were really called Donald Dump. Did you hear that instead?
That's not funny.
Yep, and here's
That's actually
my
fairly
wife's
disgusting.
pocketbook. Well, Jim, this is your idea.
It was fun. It's actually Hannah's idea.
You can't
but
kind
go
of keep out of it. David Medfield says, my wife's pocketbook was stolen weeks later. Her passport was found and returned when a nearby porta-potty was pumped out. Awkward presentation, repeated times as expats in a Ziploc bag until the replacement arrived.
That's really horrible.
Isn't that horrible?
So what do you think the takeaway is from this discussion? You're pretty good at summing
Are we
things
almost
up.
done?
We are.
I think that if you don't want people to make kind of gross remarks, you shouldn't have a 22-minute talker.
No, that's not my
about
point.
porta-potties. That's what I think.
It was not a show question. It was a porta-potty question.
I think that generally speaking, people don't like them, but you know, you're in extremis. You do what you got to do, Jim.
That's
and
actually
you're glad to see it if you're in that situation.
Beautifully
and
put.
I can see where if you're running a marathon, you know, especially at the start when you're nervous and you see everybody else going and you think, I've got 26 miles ahead of me. It could be 3 hours, could be 4 hours. Maybe I should go now.
What happened to peeing people's bushes in Hopkinton? They used to do that all the time. What's wrong with that?
Well, you know, you're a man, Jim. Have
Oh,
a
that's
little,
a good
have a
point.
little
That's a
empathy
good
for
point.
the other
That's
sex
a very
here.
good point.
Okay,
We're done.
We're done for today. I hope you weren't grossed out by this last segment.
I wasn't, no, thank you.
Hannah Lost did a very distinguished report on
She
porta
did.
potties, and we went right down.
That was above
the
board.
Whatever.
Yeah, we did.
Yes, we did.
Right
okay.
down the porta-potty. Thank you.
We did. Thanks for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thank you for people that came down to the Boston Public Library. Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. We have a 3-hour one or a half-hour one. I recommend the latter rather than the former. We have our crew to thank: Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our porta-potty reporter, intrepid porta-potty reporter, our engineer, John LeClaw Parker, our executive producer, Jane Bologna. Special thanks to our intern, Ethan Kotler, who is
you are the
leaving
best.
today. Was it something that we said? Probably something that Jim said.
By the way, can we take 10 seconds? He is so hardworking.
He is.
And so smart and so resourceful.
Yep.
It's been not only a joy working with you, but it's great to know you too. You're going to do wonderfully well in this industry. Thank you, Ethan.
Some said he couldn't take it anymore, Jim, and that's why he's leaving. I don't know if that's
true. How come you're not leaving then?
I'm going to get a medal. At the end of this, I'm going to get a medal. Anyway.
I have 10-year-old little kids complaining about me now. That's how bad it is.
Ethan is going to go do a co-op at the Boston Globe, so congratulations about that,
Good
Ethan.
luck, Ethan. You're
okay, a special thanks as well to our Boston Public Library team, Maddie Geyer, Matthew Glover, Carly Cochran, Isabella Karen, and our thanks to our host, the Newsfeed Cafe and the Lenox Hotel.
And Carolicious. They were fabulous.
Yes, it was delicious.
Great.
Stay tuned to the Culture Show's Week in Review. That's starting today right here at the Boston Public Library. If you're in the neighborhood, stop by and check it out right after the 2 o'clock news on GBH 89.7. And again, the Culture Show is live from the Boston Public Library.
And let's
Yes,
also
Jim.
say a lot of people are off in different radio stations on Monday. We have a half live show on Monday, half talking about the marathon, half talking about the beginning of the first criminal trial of a former president in U.S. history. I'm Jim Browdy.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Thanks for listening. Have
Bye.
a great weekend.
Thank you.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Heights Crossing Assisted Living in Brockton, helping seniors stay socially connected and independent with arts, fitness, learning programs, and a Compass Memory Support Neighborhood. More at heightscrossing.com. If you don't see race, you're not seeing the full picture. Join a panel of experts as they lead insightful conversations on issues affecting people of color. Watch a new episode of Basic Black tonight at 7:30 on GBH2.
You can make a huge impact in supporting GBH News by donating your old car, truck, or other used vehicle to our vehicle donation program. Your support drives our station and allows us to keep you informed and engaged in what's happening in our community. So, as you start your spring cleaning, let us help you declutter by taking your unwanted vehicle off your hands. Learn more about our vehicle donation program at gbh.org/vehicle donation.
Trusted, local, news. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston. Online AR, what matters to you.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Coming up on The Culture Show, live from the GBH studio at the Boston Public Library, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review. First up, the cultural influence of O.J. Simpson. First, as the Juice, a star football player who ran through the field with almost unmatched success. Then as the actor who starred in everything from Hertz commercials to hit movies. Finally, as the man who was acquitted in the grisly murder of his ex-wife Nicole Simpson and her companion Ron Goldman in the trial of the century. From there, it's total recall of the total eclipse, from regional tourism to epic traffic jams. Then it's on to Boston's own Farhoff. That is the Folk Americana Roots Hall of Fame, and their list of inaugural inductees from the band to Oscar Brand. And along the way, we unleash our enthusiasm for Curb Your Enthusiasm's final episode. That's next on The Culture Show Week in Review.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The U.S. House has reauthorized a central part of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act that was about to expire after lawmakers agreed to shorten its renewal period from 5 to 2 years. The bill now heads to the Senate. Side the U.S. without a warrant, including their communications with U.S. citizens. Former President Donald Trump came out against extending FISA authority without providing evidence. A GOP presumptive presidential nominee wrote on his Truth Social media platform that he believed FISA was illegally used to spy on his campaign. Israel is on high alert. Iran is threatening a strike on Israeli targets in retaliation for what is presumed to have been an Israeli airstrike last week on Iran's embassy compound in Syria. NPR's Rob Schmitz has the latest from Tel Aviv.
Iran's leaders have repeatedly vowed to punish Israel for an April 1st strike in Syria that killed several Iranian commanders. Israel has put its military on alert, and the U.S. dispatched its top military commander for the Middle East, General Michael Kurilla, to Israel on Thursday. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin spoke by phone with Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, assuring him that Israel could count on full U.S. support to defend Israel against an Iranian attack.
NPR's Rob Schmitz reporting. Israel says it has opened a new border crossing into northern Gaza following pressure from the U.S. to ease the humanitarian crisis. More from NPR's Carrie Kahn.
Israeli officials are touting the rapid rise in cross-border truck traffic, but also criticizing the UN for not distributing the goods fast enough once inside Gaza. David Mentor is a spokesman for Israel's Prime Minister's office.
We're saying to the UN, do your job. Focus on distribution and stop blaming Israel for your huge failures.
The UN says it has many logistical limitations, including fuel and truck shortages inside Gaza, and it wants better safety assurances from Israel for aid workers, following the killing of 7 World Central Kitchen workers by an Israeli airstrike. Carrie Kahn, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Stock markets are tumbling, capping off what has been a rough week. We have more from NPR's Raphael Nam.
It's been a tough day and a tough week for investors. Markets continue to reel from data this week showing inflation running hotter than expected. That means the Federal Reserve may have to leave interest rates high for a while longer. JP Morgan Chase, the world's biggest bank, says those higher interest rates are starting to impact some parts of its business. And geopolitical tensions in the Middle East between Iran and Israel are also keeping investors cautious.
That's Raphael Nam reporting. It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Public safety officials are offering their typical recommendations ahead of this Monday's Boston Marathon. They are urging spectators to stay off the roads and use public transportation to get to and from the race. Jody Cohen is special agent in charge of the FBI's Boston field office.
At this point in time, the FBI is not aware of any specific or credible threats targeting this year's marathon. While we are confident in this assessment, we are asking you to remain vigilant because the threat landscape can change at any time.
They want you to say something if you see something. Roughly 500,000 people are expected to show up to watch this year's marathon. They'll be cheering on about 30,000 athletes making their way from Hopkinton to Copley Square. And about half of those 30,000 runners will be new to the marathon this year. The plans are in place to turn the former Chelsea Soldiers' Home into a facility for migrants and homeless families. The Globe reports that the shelter is expected to house roughly 100 families and is intended for parents with children or pregnant women who are eligible for the state's emergency shelter program but have been put on a wait list. The facility will offer on-site services to migrants, including help finding stable housing, applying for work authorization, and connecting with potential employers. Officials say renovations are being made now so that the shelter can open in a week or two. Celtics play the Hornets at the Garden. The Red Sox and LA Angels open up a series at Fenway tonight. A win for the Sox would be nice. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indiana University, committed to moving the world forward and working to tackle some of society's biggest challenges. 9 campuses, 1 purpose, creating tomorrow today. More at iu.edu.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Q Legal, providing legal marketing solutions for law firms in Boston and beyond. Marketing strategies include websites, social media, video, and search. You can learn more about their services at qlegal.com. And H&H, the Handel and Haydn Society. You can savor the shimmering spectrum of emotion in Brahms' Requiem, a showcase for the H&H Chorus, April 19th and 21st at Symphony Hall. handelandhaydn.org.
Welcome to the Culture Show, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm co-host Edgar B. Herwick III. Jared Bowen is out today. I'm joined by co-host Callie Crossley and Culture Show contributor Lisa Simmons. She's the artistic and executive director of the Roxbury International Film Fest and program manager at Mass Cultural Council. It's time for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Here's what it sounded like.
O.J. Simpson in a knit cap from 2 blocks away is still O.J. Simpson. It's no disguise. It's no disguise. It makes no sense. It doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Yeah, just for a little bit of context here, the normal additional traffic around a busy holiday weekend like Labor Day sees about an additional 20,000 vehicles pass through the Hooksett tolls here on Interstate 93. The Eclipse traffic was nearly triple that.
Folk music is the music of the people, of all people.
If you can taste the dirt through your ears, that's Americana.
After nearly 24 years on the air, HBO's iconic series Curb Your Enthusiasm will come to an end.
A big fan of your show.
Oh, now you're embarrassing me. Go on.
I've been listening since college. I love Follow-Up Fridays.
Men visiting the old Museum of Tasmania will soon be allowed into its ladies' lounge. Mona has been ordered to make the change after a man complained the women-only policy was discriminatory.
There it is. Gary and Teresa are married, and the wedding might be over, but the party is just getting started.
As you just heard, we're going to take a look at the cultural influence of O.J. Simpson as a star running back and charismatic actor, to the trial that cleared him of 2 murders, and the courtroom spectacle that framed race relations in America and forever changed how we cover and fetishize true crime. Then we will move on to a bespectacled spectacle, the world's reaction to the full total solar eclipse, from the path of totality tourism to the aftermath, once-in-a-lifetime traffic jams. Plus, Boston's own Folk Americana Music Hall of Fame and their inaugural inductees, and how the Curb Your Enthusiasm finale flipped the script on Seinfeld's last show. Finally, we'll have a golden edition of Follow-Up Friday. That'll make a little bit more sense later, with an update of some of the stories we have been chatting about over the last few weeks. But first up, O.J. Simpson, a towering cultural figure, died this week of cancer at the age of 76. And we're going to talk a little bit about his legacy. Let's start off by remembering a bit about O.J. Simpson and who he was up until August of 1994.
In 1973, playing a 14-game season, Simpson sprinted for a staggering 2,003 yards.
But don't thank me. There's someone else here who wants to thank you.
Nordberg! Hiya, buddy. Hey! Doc says I should be on my bean and as good as new in a week.
And back on the force.
Nordberg! That's wonderful.
Coming or going on a business trip, you've got no time to waste. And nobody knows that better than Hertz. Whether it's picking up or dropping off your car, nobody has more to do it faster.
So, Callie, I mean, it's sort of difficult now to think about O.J. Simpson, and he was, though, an enormous star before all of this darkness entered the picture. What do you remember about who O.J. Simpson was then?
Well, you know, not being a sports person, not even I knew that he was a big football star. And because he was one of the few black people at the time that had gained a level of celebrity that would allow him to move into the kinds of endorsements that African Americans just didn't get. So the Hertz commercial alone spoke volumes about what people thought about him as someone who was bigger than the game that he played. That he almost immediately, even after he made all the records as a sports person, he became something other than that. He was more than a football player and on to something else.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think exactly. I mean, I remember I had posters of him in my bedroom.
Really?
I was a big sports fan. So yeah, I completely remember him, completely, loved his work, loved him in The Naked Gun, loved him in, all the things that he followed up after. But you're right, that Hertz commercial really catapulted him. And what a fall from grace. I mean, to have him end his life the way it did. But he was a cultural phenomenon. He was an icon.
I mean, and he was worldwide. He was handsome. He was charming.
Yeah.
Again, one of these figures that really transcended sports. And then, of course, comes the summer of 1994. We have the murder of Nicole Brown and her friend Ron Goldman, and then the stunning, I think is the only way to say it when it happened, the stunning white Bronco chase covered live on television.
I think it'd be hard for people to wrap their heads around it if they hadn't heard about it before, but he just got in his car. We found out afterwards that he had a gun to his head. He was in the car with one of his friends, and he drove at, 30 miles an hour? It was a slow chase, and all these cop cars, and they didn't know what he was going to do. So they really couldn't communicate with him. I mean, A.J. Cowlings was trying to call out during that situation. But what happened was it was taken live by all the networks. There weren't as many as now. So essentially it became must-see TV in a way that you couldn't have imagined.
Right. It was almost like the marathon bombings, right?
Right.
It's like everything sort of went silent. It's like the only time the LA freeway is like not had any cars on it, right? I mean, it was amazing to watch this Bronco just driving. We were all captivated by this, having no idea what the outcome was going to be and what was going to happen.
And then
yeah,
a trial.
Right.
The trial of the century.
Let's have a little listen to what happens in the months that follow.
Los Angeles County Coroner's Office said the 2 victims died of sharp force injuries and multiple stab wounds.
I'm going to have to interrupt this call. I understand we're going to go to a live picture in Los Angeles. Police believe that O.J. Simpson is in that car.
It makes no sense. It doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information.
Callie, sorry, go
no,
ahead.
I was just going to say amazing. And I think that, there was so much going on at the time in LA with Rodney King and everything. And I think that, they had a predominantly, black panel and women, and I think that people were just, and people talk about the black community saying, I can't believe that you all believe that OJ was not guilty, and I don't think that was it. I think that there was so much vitriol going on in the news. It was just sort of like they didn't want there to be another sort of like police situation where black men were being accused and murdered and all this other stuff. So it was just a really interesting take on that criminal trial and what happened.
So a couple things culturally to know. OJ was not embraced by a lot of black folks, so I didn't think he was it,
because he never stood up for what was going on.
So it was a cultural huge shift.
I mean, and it's sort of this developing storyline that, as you say, it touched on race, it touched on celebrity, it was
domestic
money,
abuse.
it was domestic abuse. It's
and
happening in LA, sports, media, policing,
domestic violence, right?
All of these things happening. Callie, you've talked about the fact that, like, while this was happening, and even since, you were one of those people who kind of became obsessed with it.
I did.
So, like, why? What was it about what was happening that continued to grip your imagination as this was going on?
First of all, as I said, he was not the guy that I knew most black folks embraced. At the same time, there was that undercurrent of folks knew exactly what the legal system was, which, as Lisa just said, the Rodney King thing had happened, no justice there. So they knew the process was going to be screwed. There were larger than life folks who were like characters. So this, any other given day, this would seem like a made-for TV movie, which it eventually became. But at the time, there were these characters that were larger than life. It's in LA. It's celebrity. Its DNA was not a thing before.
Yeah.
DNA was introduced. Domestic abuse, we weren't talking about it the way we are now. That was a part of the story. And certainly all underpinning that was all of the racial tension around the legal process. And he had a celebrity team, legal
huge.
Team.
Oh,
so there was like double celebrity.
F. Lee Bailey and Johnny Cochran. The dream team.
The dream team, they called it.
Right. So I need for people to understand that at the time, there was no back-to-back analysis on TV of any given thing. So this did not exist at MSNBC. This was Court TV's infancy. So now that's the baby that came from there that's now grown up to some kind of horrible thing.
Exactly.
But there you
and
go.
It's amazing because that there was a film, it was a series called OJ Made in America, which was made by
Ezra Edelman.
Ezra Edelman and
30 for 30,
30 for 30, which is amazing. It was a 30 for 30 film, but it was actually reliving this. I've seen it. It's reliving it all over again, and you're still so captivated by it. We are still so captivated by the celebrity, by all all of this.
We're
And then-
living in the aftermath of it still. I think about like when COVID happened, and people were talking about when are we going to get back to normal, and it sort of dawns on you eventually, no, there is no more new norm. Like COVID has changed us forever. And I think this trial changed the media landscape and American culture forever.
It did.
That's right. And so we're still grappling with what we wanted the media to be. Then when we talked about celebrity, it was OJ as a celebrity, but now everywhere you look, it's celebrity everything. Celebrity cookies, celebrity thoughts, celebrity hair. It's just crazy.
I mean, Kardashian was one of his lawyers.
That's
so
right.
we have the
Which is pretty
Kardashians.
amazing.
He was
It was pretty amazing.
We listen, the dulcet tones of
what?
Turn around bright eyes. A total eclipse of the heart. And of course, if there was one story that could possibly eclipse the OJ story this week, it was a total eclipse of the sun, which happened through much of North America, including here in New England. A lot of folks ambled their way just north or west of here to get into the path of totality here in the Boston area. People still got 90+% of a solar eclipse. So we just want to take a moment and talk about how that happened. Where were you, Lisa, when it went down?
I was on a beach in Cape Cod looking through a sunroof.
Oh, cool.
Yes, I did not go
You didn't
north.
have eclipse glasses?
I didn't go totality. I did have eclipse glasses. It was pretty amazing, just watching it inch by inch by inch by inch. But yes, no, it was beautiful. It was amazing.
Nice. Callie, where
I
were
was
you?
on my little pocket balcony. In 2017, I was with a lot of people on Martha's Vineyard at the Edgartown Library, but this time not a communal experience except writ large. I was on my balcony, and when I went out, it was a chunk of cheese, and then the longer I watched, it became a rind.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
so it was amazing. You
Yeah.
know?
If folks were listening to the Culture Show this week, they know that I was up in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, which was in the path of totality, along with one of our producers, Kate Dallas. We have a little bit of sound of what went on up there when totality actually happened. So let's hear a little bit of the moment when we had a total eclipse of the sun.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Oh my. That is Venus.
We are in totality, in St. Johnsbury.
It was, there were a couple thousand people there, and I think the predictions leading up to it, a lot of people said they thought people were going to get very silent and just kind of take this in, but it was full applause. I mean, it was a minute and a half of people applauding and crying. There was a lot of tears. A lot of people were, including myself, were very emotional. It's odd and sort of hard to explain, but this incredible phenomenon.
And then I heard you were crying later.
And then who would have guessed that actually of the things that happened that day, that was the less epic thing. 'Cause the more epic thing was driving back from Vermont.
I know. I can't even believe you did that. You
took 10 hours.
You should have stayed another week. It
10
probably would have
hours.
been
At
helpful.
one point in northern New Hampshire on 93, and I know I was not alone in this, there were thousands and thousands of people on the road, but it took about 7 hours to go 7 miles.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm in a manual transmission car, so I've got to be on the clutch the whole time. And by the end of that stretch of traffic, my leg was shaking because my muscles were tiring out, and I had to push my leg down to get the clutch down.
Edgar, that's when you pull over to the Motel 6 and say, "I'm going to try this again tomorrow."
Well, no, but the thing is, they closed the exits, and also all of the hotels were filled anyway. There was no way off this road. It was seriously, it could be the premise of a horror movie, because people were trapped on this highway. And if you were listening to Boston Public Radio earlier, we could have used some of those job Johnnies, those porta-potties on the side of the road.
I was going to say,
because there were people just abandoning their cars and going out into the woods. I mean, it was a moment.
But it was worth it. It was worth it.
Yeah, absolutely worth it. And
you won't forget it.
I won't. So, and don't forget, if you do want to see an eclipse, it's going to be a long time till we have one here. But of course, in 2 years, if you can get to Iceland or northern Spain in August, another total solar eclipse will be happening. So
I think it's great.
It's fantastic. All right, we're going to step away for just a moment. Up next, the pranksters disrupting museums and the Folk Americana Roots Hall of Fame inaugural inductees. This is The Culture Show, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
The AG's office is dealing with a bevy of issues, including a lawsuit against the town of Milton and cracking down on youth sports betting. I'm Adam Riley. This week on Talking Politics, we sit down with Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell to discuss. Plus, a breakdown of the recent GBH News and Commonwealth Beacon poll about how Mass residents feel about the election, state politics, and more. Join me for Talking Politics tonight at 7 on GBH2.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Johnson & Wales University. From faculty mentors to research and internships, JWU helps students explore their passions through an immersive approach to education. You can discover more at jwu.edu. And Spring Pool Arts, presenting Robert Frost, This Verse Business, by playwright A.M. Dolan and starring Broadway and television actor Gordon Clapp, April 23rd through 28th at Calderwood Pavilion. Tickets at bostontheaterscene.com.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, the organizers of the Boston Marathon are facing a lawsuit over discrimination claims dating back to last year's race. Meantime, local leaders are offering safety tips ahead of this Monday's race. And making money off of surplus solar power is usually a perk for homeowners. For this week's Joy Beat, we'll look at a community co-op aiming to get the benefits of solar to disadvantaged communities. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Welcome back to the Culture Show, broadcasting live from the GBH studio at the Boston Public Library, where you can join our studio audience every Friday. No reservations required, so come on down. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III with co-host Callie Crossley and Culture Show contributor Lisa Simmons. Jared Bowen is out today. If you're just tuning in, this is our Arts and Culture Week in Review, which includes now Farhoff, which is a
wow,
not a wonderful term, but that is the Folk Americana Roots Hall of Fame. They have announced their inaugural inductees. Now, this is an institution that has been a couple years in the making and is right here in the Boston area. It sort of began 6-7 years ago, was a project that I think initially was just going to be a concert series.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we know here in the Boston area we have a long tradition with folk music and roots music and Americana music. And so the pandemic slowed things down, but eventually what started as a concert series kind of became this, let's make a Hall of Fame. And at the Wang Theater that has happened, and there's a collection of exhibitions and stuff that have been built there over 4 floors, and it's kind of grown. They've done a couple of really interesting photography exhibitions. Last year, earlier this year, they had a Bruce Springsteen photography exhibition. They have one coming up on Blue Note stuff. But now they've finally gotten around to the thing where it's really kind of becoming a real Hall of Fame, and they're going to inaugurate their first class of musicians in this sort of what is going to be a yearly thing, like we see with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or the Country Music Hall of Fame. So it's happening.
I can't believe it hasn't happened before. I can't believe that. You know what I mean? I mean, with all of these other Hall of Fames, I mean, folk music is America's music, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's people's culture and people's lives.
Rooted.
It's rooted. It is rooted in American culture.
For real.
It is rooted. Yeah, it is for real.
Yeah. No, I would agree, and it's it was so much a part of my growing up. I heard it every Saturday morning. My mother would put on all kinds of folk artists, Odetta being the number one for me. Odetta Holmes is her last name. Some people may remember that she sang "Oh Freedom" at the March on Washington in 1963. She had a fabulous career. One of the songs that she was known for was "The House of the Rising Sun."
Mm-hmm. Let's hear a little of Odetta doing House of the Rising Sun.
There is a house in New Orleans. They call the Rising Sun.
Woo!
She's good.
It's been on the ruin. Many poor girls look at me.
So we heard that, and of course there's a hole in the bucket, dear Eliza, there's a hole in the bucket, Dear Liza, Anyway, this is fabulous that we get the recognition. I know you guys have other people that you picked from the list of honorees. I just want to note that part of PASIM and work, a center, an arts institution at the center of
Club
PASIM.
Club Cambridge. Once known as Club 47 back in the day.
That's right. They have an inaugural class of the folk collective organized by artist Shay Rose to try to make sure that folk music reflects all of the communities.
All of the community, the diversity.
Yeah, so you mentioned Odetta, and Odetta is one of these 28 initial inductees. Basically, what the institution did, and they said, I think they had like kind of a short list of 187, which they whittled down to these 28. It was a committee of 30 people, which included board members of this organization, and then people in the industry as advisors. And so they have solo legacy artists, Odetta being one. So these are artists that are no longer with us, and that's, they've got Odetta, Lead Belly, Johnny Cash, Pete Seeger, Richie Havens, Woody Guthrie, and then some solo living artists and a couple of duos or groups like the Byrds, the Band, Peter, Paul and Mary, the Weavers. How do we feel about do we feel like they struck the right note in terms of having music that is reflecting the diversity of what we claim to be folk and Americana and roots? Because I
think so. I think it's a great list. I think it's a diverse list. I think it's a great list. I love that they have the Paul Robeson Artist Activist Award. I think that's pretty amazing too. No, I looked at the list. Now you can only hope the people that are going to come after them, like a Tracy Chapman and folks like that. But no, I think that there are definitely people on this list that I can totally relate to. And like what Callie was saying about Club PASIM, the folk collective, one of the other big resurgence here and the things that are happening here in Massachusetts is the celebration of people of color in folk music. And they had a We Black Folk Festival, which I think is great. And then there's another celebration coming up this weekend in Gloucester that is focusing on reclaiming folk, because as we talked about it's rooted in Americana. It is a very diverse.
So of the nominees in this class, who's caught your eye, Lisa?
Well, James Taylor caught my eye only because I grew up with James Taylor. I really, not
like
actually.
He was your next door neighbor, because that's the kind of thing
because we were really good friends. And we just,
I call him Jimmy.
We're back and forth all the time. Actually, he just called me before I came here. But his music. I really grew up with his music, but also Bonnie Raitt, and I grew up with all of that music.
Yeah, let's hear a little James Taylor as long as you're mentioning James Taylor. We're talking about music. Let's hear some music.
To sing along.
Yeah. Take it, Callie.
I'm not even going to do that.
James Taylor, the first artist that the Beatles signed to their Apple Records. So when they launched their own record, it was James Taylor was their first artist.
I think it says something that we know a lot of these songs.
Right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And in theory, that's the idea behind something that you're going to see folk. It's music of the people, as they say. So the idea that these are the modern versions of songs that you can get a room of people together, and likely a bunch of them are going to know it and be able to sing along. That's kind of part of it's that communal experience, right?
And that's what I love about it, is things that people you don't necessarily think are folk music, they are, and then it's really about storytelling, right? And so these are the folks.
Who's your pick?
There's a ton of people on here that I really like. I also really like that it's not all household names. I think there's some important people like Jean Ritchie, who was like a dulcimer player, and she was very influential on the artists that would come after her, the Joan Baez's of the world, and a lot of those 60 artists. Josh White, who is an unbelievable silky smooth singer, really unique guitar player. Oscar Brand, who did as much for radio and spreading folk music on radio as he did, he kind of did novelty songs and stuff. But if I had to pick one that I'm really excited about, I would have to say that's John Prine, who's again, I think he's well known and still not well known enough.
Right.
Incredible storyteller, incredible musician. Really, just an interesting body of work. Maybe we can listen to a little bit of John Prine, one of my favorites of his, which is probably one of the saddest and yet most hopeful songs ever written.
Yeah.
And what a loss, right?
Yeah,
Lost him during COVID.
He was
COVID took
lost
him.
in COVID.
Yep.
Yeah. So they say this. The museum says that from here on out, they're going to induct 12 new people every year. And we'll see what happens. There's a ceremony of some sort that's going to happen around this one next week. It's not open to the public, but it will be on PBS eventually in the fall. So we'll get to see some of what happens there. And who knows? I mean, you look at things like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville, and the engines they are in the cultural sphere and economic sphere for those cities. Who knows what this will become?
It's a huge draw, and it's at the Bach, right? Isn't that where it is?
Yeah,
Bach Center.
Indeed. So now, what would the opposite of being inducted into an esteemed institution be? Maybe that would be a German worker who was not invited to do something at an esteemed, inducting himself on the walls of a museum. So
Why not?
Some museum mischief right now going on. So this is at a museum in Munich, Germany, and a 51-year-old employee, I still don't think they have said what his name is, but essentially he was there installing an exhibition on philanthropy in one part of the museum. He's also an artist himself, so he kind of ambled over to a wing of the museum and hung his own work up on the wall.
Good for him.
I agree.
You know, I'm telling you.
I agree.
The crazy thing about this story is that it hung there because the museum noticed it at opening, but then they left it up there for 8 hours because I think they didn't want to have any, why are you taking that thing off the wall? So he got 8 hours of fame of his painting. And then some quote said, all I can say is that we did not receive any positive feedback on the addition in the visitors gallery.
Well, it was only up for 8 hours.
I don't think they got negative feedback either, though. Right. So I love it.
Do you?
Yes.
You like this? I love it too.
This is what they mean when they tell you to think outside the box.
Yeah.
Right. He's an artist. He wants to get seen. What better place than in a world-renowned museum?
I agree. I'm
right
fully
next to
for
the
this.
Warhol. He put it right next to a Warhol.
No, and this is one of those things that I think, like, when it happens, if the person never becomes famous, people might look at it and go, like, who did that guy think he was? But also somebody like Banksy, for example.
Yeah.
Banksy was doing this earlier in his career, right? He went into the Tate or the Met, I think the MoMA, and like did this kind of like prankish sort of work. So, I'm sort of like, well done on you.
Kind of a little hero. He's going to be.
Yeah, apparently he was also a very well-liked employee as well. So they kind of felt bad. It sounds like the museum has felt kind of bad, but they were basically like, look, you cannot work here anymore. Also, you are not allowed on the grounds anymore. So I mean,
the fact that he drilled it into the wall and no one said anything.
I know. I think he should have an exhibit. The out exhibit.
I agree. Speaking
My
of
first showing was.
Speaking of pranks becoming exhibits, something going on at the Met as well. We're kind of thinking about mischief at museums. This is a group kind of known as Mischief. They are artist collective. There's kind of startup pranksters, agents of playful chaos are ways you could think of this group. But they're an art group, and they've done these kind of, they do these sort of mischievous sort of things.
Right.
Like, for example, in the past, they had an ATM that publicly displayed your balance, and they had a thing where they took Nike Air Jordan sneakers and put a drop of holy water from the Jordan River in them, right? So their latest thing is called the Met Sink of Theseus. And what they did is they went into the bathroom at the Met and they took a bunch of component parts out of a sink. And they replaced them, they said, with nicer pieces. But essentially, this is a reference to the ship of Theseus, the thought experiment. If you take something and remove all its component parts, is it still that same thing? But they gathered all of this stuff from this sink at the Met, and it's now on display at a gallery in L.A.
The art, too.
So what do we think of these pranksters?
You know what? We need this. You need to shake it up, right?
Yeah.
You need to shake up the art world just a little bit. I mean, if you can get away with it, I think that's a great idea. What I love about this story, there's an actual Instagram reel that has them discussing what they're going to do, and they're like, is it a robbery? Is it a performance? Is it a stunt? It's like, I think we should do the Met. You want to steal some art? The other one responded, no, I want to steal a sink. I mean, it's like they're having this conversation.
I love the line with the guy who says, what happens if we get caught? Well, I'm a plumber.
Yeah, say you're a plumber.
Same thing, nothing. So, I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, we've had a number of stories so far on this show about how much security or lack thereof are in these museums and how intentional they are about not letting certain kinds of items inside.
Like a water bottle?
Yeah, so here we are, and then people are taking apart a whole sink.
Yeah. I mean, we talked just not long ago about at the Met, right? There was a whole incident where somebody tried to bring a keffiyeh in, and a guard spotted it in their bag and said, no, you can't bring that in here. And yet, meanwhile, in a bathroom somewhere,
tools you can bring in.
They're swapping out an entire sink at the Met.
And I guess it was in the men's room, because I'm going to say, having been to the Met recently for that Harlem exhibit, you couldn't do that in the ladies' room because it's always full.
It's interesting. The Met, as far as I have seen, the Met has yet to comment on this, and the folks behind this prank have yet to disclose which bathroom it is. So unless somebody, we don't even know which sink in which bathroom in the Met this is, which I think is just
men's room.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, that's it for right now. Coming up, stay with us. We'll be right back. How Larry David flipped the script and flipped the bird in the series finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm. That and more is next on The Culture Show, live from our GBH studio right here at the Boston Public Library. Stay with us.
You can negotiate a sticker price on a car or haggle your way around a farmer's market. But what about college tuition?
Colleges are businesses, and colleges are going to try to get you to pay as much as they can get you to pay.
In our podcast, College Uncovered, we talk tips on getting a better deal and how to navigate the financial aid maze.
Is this free money? Is this a scholarship? Is this a loan?
Listen to College Uncovered wherever you get your podcast.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Rockland Trust Bank. Their team is dedicated to bringing the vision of your business to life, providing support and advice tailored to your specific goals. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. And We Clean Heat Pumps, providing cleaning and maintenance of ductless mini-split heat pumps for the protection of air quality in homes and businesses as AC season is here. More at WeCleanHeatPumps.com.
I'm Marco Werman. We're living through history, and the world's newsroom has the first draft.
If journalists leave a scene, it becomes a black hole. Then the world doesn't find out what's happening. And when the world doesn't know what's happening, human sympathy also evaporates.
Looking for answers and making sense of global events as they happen. Join us on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to The Culture Show, broadcasting live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. If you're just joining us, it is our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Really quick, immediate correction. I had just mentioned, we were talking about security, that the keffiyeh incident had happened at the Met. That actually happened at the MoMA, not the Met. Got my New York museums crossed there. But as you can hear behind us, it's time to get enthusiastic about Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David. 11 seasons, 120 episodes on HBO, and it came to a conclusion this week. Callie, what did you think?
So Larry David. It's so Larry David. It's so Curb Your Enthusiasm. It has all of that. The plot line, I won't go in case people haven't seen it, but the basic core of the plot line is that he has to fly to Atlanta with his core group of folks because he has committed a crime in Georgia by giving water to a woman who is standing in line to vote. And as people may know, that's an actual law in Georgia.
A Good Samaritan.
Yes. So he's taking off from an actual law to spin out this fantastical tale of stuff that happens to he and his crew. And it's pretty hilarious, and it's very much Larry David.
Lisa, are you a Larry David Curb Your Enthusiasm fan?
I've watched it a number of times. I haven't watched 120 episodes, but I
How dare you? How dare you?
But I might need to go back because it's a cultural phenomenon, right?
Yes.
It's in playing on everyday life, right?
Yes.
Things that annoy you. That whether it's standing in line waiting to use the ATM. excuse me, or the one where he lets someone into the doctor's office first and they get seen first and he has to wait, and then it becomes this whole thing about waiting. So I mean, it's just like, that's why I think it really resonates with everybody.
Yeah, I think
like,
one of our producers, Max, when we were talking about this before the show, I think it was him who had the line, "There's a little bit of Larry David in all of us."
Yes.
And I think that's why this show works, right? Because everybody, I think, in their less generous moments have those thoughts, or they kind of wish the fantasy that they could do the things that Larry David just goes ahead and does.
Right. And I think what's really important and sums it up well is the title of the of the last episode in the series is called "No Lessons Learned," which is important.
Yeah.
So he wanted to let you know he did not, at the end of this long run on Max, HBO, wherever, come to some warm and
his previous show, Seinfeld, which
Yes.
he was a co-creator of Seinfeld. And, that committed and remained committed to being a show about nothing, right? Like that idea that I didn't learn anything, this is a show about nothing. And, of course, in this final episode, there's also some rhyming and chiming with the final episode of Seinfeld, right?
Exactly. Deliberately. Going to jail and having, right. But then he says he gets off, right? He's like, because he becomes this, like, privileged
They wanted
person.
to go back and actually reference that because people were mad about the ending of Seinfeld. So
exactly.
this is an opportunity for him to do
that. It really is sort of like genius the way that, most of the show was improvised, right? It was like sort of like structured out, but then people had the opportunity, and you can tell that. It sort of like reminds me of the Carol Burnett show where, it's just hysterical. You can't help but laugh, I mean,
but they stayed in character.
But they stayed in character. Yes, exactly. So, here he is disciplining people, but then turning around and violating all the stuff that he's disciplining people for,
Yeah, I
There's
mean,
so many.
It's amazing to me because I sort of think of Curb and Seinfeld as one and the same in a way. I mean, the shows are sort of doing the same thing. They're sort of built the same way. And, I think about it, it's like an artist like a Jackson Pollock or Rothko or Mondrian, right? Where like they kind of, from one way of looking at it, all of the paintings look the same. But they're like finding these like little variations inside of this same trick over and over again. And I mean, this man got 180 episodes of Seinfeld and 120 episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm. All essentially variations on the same iconic idea, which is astounding.
Do you think that this can happen again? That's why I wonder. I think it takes a certain kind of comic insight
and building of a cast. I mean, the cast is not just Larry David, but his whole cast was just unbelievable, and bringing in people that really added to this craziness of like the new car that he got, and then he gets in an act. I mean, it's just all these little things that happen to you on a daily basis, but you never think to blow them out of proportion and then blame everybody. And then like, what's wrong with you? Why should I feel badly about it? But so,
it'll be marked down already as a cultural phenomenon in comedy and beyond, because just like Seinfeld, I don't think a lot of people know how many references out here in the world that we use regularly that come from that show.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, I think it is a cultural phenomenon too, because he hits on things that people, like the whole thing around Hollywood, like he's shooting around Hollywood. He's giving you a totally different look of what Hollywood is.
Yeah. All right. So we are going to finish up today with one of Callie's favorite things to do, which is Follow Up Friday. We take some of the stories that we've been keeping an eye on, that we've talked about here, that have moved on, and we talk a little bit about what has developed. We're going to start in Tasmania, down near Australia there. In Australia, with the Ladies' Lounge. We talked about this. I guess you could call it an art exhibition at this museum. The idea here was that there was a velvet-clad lounge that contained some of this museum's most acclaimed works, including a Picasso, and there was a bar, and the deal here was that only women could go inside of it, and this was the work of art. The work of art was that men were not allowed in this lounge. Of course, eventually a man did sue, and it turns out this week that he won, which I think I will say it surprised me. I don't know if it surprised you, Callie, but I thought they had a pretty strong case, but He's won, and it looks like this ladies' lounge is going to be no more.
Well, she hasn't said exactly what she's going to do, the artist. She's pretty mad about it. The court case looked as though it was going to go in her favor. They made quite a spectacle out of the court case because the whole point of the exhibit was to talk about the discrimination that still exists against women who couldn't access certain spaces. So here comes this guy who misses the whole point of the exhibit and insists that he must go inside, which is against the point of the exhibit.
That's the hypocrisy of it all.
And of course, their argument, which I think was a strong one, was he is experiencing the exhibit, and he's experiencing it exactly as it was intended to be experienced.
And that's what they said. And I mean, the fact that women couldn't go into the nation's pubs until 1965 is crazy, and that they were barred from doing that and charged exorbitantly for things. Right, exactly. So here, this guy from Wales comes in and says, I can't go. So now, I think they're going to take down the exhibit, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's unclear what's going to happen, but they had said earlier that, they sort of felt like there was no way it would work if they had to let men in. So
she said she's deeply saddened and she's going to absorb the situation, seek counsel, and compose myself.
Well, from a gilded lounge to a golden toilet we go now, and the story of the 18-karat gold toilet worth $6 million. This is an art piece by an Italian artist titled, and I love the title, America.
Yes.
This toilet first went on display at the Guggenheim in 2016. It was a big deal. It made headlines again in 2017 after Donald Trump's White House emailed the Guggenheim and asked for a Vincent van Gogh painting, and they responded, we can't do that, but we'll give you the golden toilet if you want it. Anyway, it had been installed at Winston Churchill's childhood home in England, and it was stolen from there.
Again, here we are going with security. How are people walking out with a $6 million gold toilet? What is it like? Just put it in a box, and it's like, we're just moving this to the other. Plus, not only did they take it out, they took all the plumbing, so there was like major damage.
Water damage on the floor and stuff.
I said to myself, what is this? A modern Thomas Crown affair?
Exactly.
because this person also is sentenced to 17 years for stealing tractors and high-value trophies from the National Horse Racing Museum in Newmarket.
Well, I thought Ocean's 8.
Ocean's 8.
Because you had to come up with some elaborate scheme.
This is now Ocean's 14.
Yeah. To get this thing out.
Yeah.
I mean, this is crazy. Yeah.
Well, no surprise, they got caught.
Well, one guy. Yes. They say there's some other people that are
That's right. So the update this week is that Jimmy Sheen pled guilty to the charges against Jimmy Sheen. He's already in jail, so he appeared in court from jail via video link. So he was in court. He was in jail for stealing something else. But you're right, Callie. There are 3 others who have pled not guilty.
Yes.
I think they go on trial in February. So more to come in February on the case of the golden toilet.
I tell you.
And let's stay golden.
Oh, my goodness.
With America's golden couple. Gary and Teresa, the golden bachelor, and his wife are no longer
of 3 months.
Callie,
and
what
now,
happened?
by the power vested in me by the state of California, it is my honor and privilege to announce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride.
True love on TV. The only place you can find true love.
This is
on
devastating.
And
I think this is incredibly
devastating. It is devastating. They announced together and holding hands on Good Morning America that they were splitting up. They said they both still loved each other, but they had all these other issues. And as I read into it, you remember after they got married, people said, well, where are you going to live?
Right, because they're East Coast, West
Coast thing. Yeah. And they said, we're working that out. I've spent some time here. He spent some time here. We'll figure out which way we want to go. So I thought to myself, here is the part of being that age that had not been discussed. Family stuff.
Family.
You would think the families, the people are grown. That wouldn't be a concern. But for each of them, they had some familial connections in where they lived that they didn't feel they could leave geographically, which is really kind of
but understanding too. I mean, they've got grandchildren, they've got children, and so where do you live in the middle of those two places in like Montana? Or
that's what you do.
Right, you do, but apparently they wouldn't want to do that.
I guess it's really quite something.
Do we think there's a chance that they were never really in love? That this is all just a big TV spectacle, and of course they got divorced.
Edgar, where is your romantic side? Really, come on.
I mean, it's there. I'm just saying. I mean, I think there's a chance.
There is a chance that there are ratings. There are things that are called ratings.
Do you think so? This was, I mean, obviously the Golden Bachelor was a ratings bonanza. I think when it happened, people were like, "Why have they waited so long to do this?" Do you think this hurts this this moving forward? Do you think more Golden Bachelors are
Well,
coming?
they've already announced a Golden Bachelorette, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of response they, give to that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the signal of the lightning round. No, that could actually be outside today, but I think that was the signal for the lightning round. So this is where we talk about some of those headlines that caught our eye this week. Lisa, what do you got?
Okay, so what caught my eye this week was Marvin Gaye. So Marvin Gaye's songs have been found in a Belgian city in Ostend. There's 66 demo songs. In 1981, he went to Belgium. He was facing some tax issues here. He was trying to get clean. He met up with this other producer who said, "Stay with us." He wrote all these songs. Now they're in. Now the family owns them. The gentleman died. The family has them. The question is, who owns the rights to produce these songs? And so now that's where we're at, because the Belgian government says it's 30 years, and anyone who has anything longer than 30 years is
defaults to them. They are then the owner,
but not intellectual property.
Oh, interesting.
So now we're going to see what happens. But can you imagine 66 new tracks from our? I'd love to hear it.
I mean, talk about a cultural.
So it's either his estate or them, whomever.
His estate has been pretty aggressive about making sure that he got all of his due. So I'll be interested to see what happens.
Yeah.
Fascinating story. We'll definitely keep an eye on that. Maybe fodder for a future version of Follow Up Friday.
Yeah.
Callie, what caught your eye?
A story that would make my dear mother, may she rest in peace, just be so furious.
Now I was interested before, but now I'm really interested.
They have updated the game of Scrabble, a new version called Scrabble Together. My mother was a whiz on Scrabble.
Really?
She beat everybody. There were nights and nights that my dad and she would be up all night because he was determined to beat her and he couldn't, and so they'd just be up all night.
Just playing Scrabble.
I love
and he's like, "We'll go again. Go again.
Exactly.
We're going again."
Exactly. But she thought it was, and that's how she taught it to us. One of the reasons to do it was to, improve your vocabulary. That was the thing.
Yeah.
So they're saying now, you youngsters, sorry, can't keep up with the words. Too hard for you.
No.
So they're doing Scrabble together, so people can give you hints. Other people can work with you collaboratively.
That's sacrilegious.
I'm
sorry.
just telling you what it is. Now, the good news about this is that apparently it's not coming here anytime soon because Mattel,
being
in the U.S., Mattel does not have the license. But all over Europe, if you were to ask for a game of Scrabble, it'll be this terrible Scrabble Together thing.
So no more European trips for you, Callie, right? Because they've ruined Scrabble, so you were boycotting going to Europe.
There you go.
I like it. My lightning round is the headline that caught my eye this week is a Superman comic that sold for a record $6 million. This was an Action Comics #1. So this is where Superman was actually introduced. He didn't have his own comic book yet. So Action #1. Superman is introduced. Also, for the record, Lois Lane introduced in that first one as well. So both Superman and Lois Lane. But this is the most expensive price tag ever for a comic book. This particular one, there were about 200,000 printed. They think there are about 100 of them today. And this one, like it is in the collector's world, part of the reason why this was so expensive is it was in really good shape, right?
Yeah.
It hasn't had to be restored. It's in really good condition. Wow. I don't know what the rating thing, but it's like very good plus or whatever. Yeah. They have this like rating system. But yeah, that now outstripped the previous record was $5.3 million for a different Superman comic. So comics, it turns out people who have a lot of money are still interested in comics.
And go to your basements and look for your comics.
Go to your basement, go to your
attics, go to your kids, like whatever you. Yep,
some
exactly.
comic books because it looks like comic books are
worth some
where
cash.
it's at right now.
Yeah. Wow.
All right. Well, that is pretty much all we have today for the Culture Show. You can catch up on all things arts and culture by way of our podcast, which you can find on Apple. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. Callie, before we go, what do you have coming up on Under the Radar this weekend?
We're doing our regional roundtable. We're talking about $130 million worth of debt payment that taxpayers will owe to pay for a soccer stadium in Pawtucket. We're looking for that. And the surprise resignation of Annie Custer in New Hampshire. And we're also answering and doing a deep dive into the 2 abortion questions that are on the poll for GBH, the GBH Commonwealth Beacon poll that was conducted by Mass Inc. We took the abortion questions to see where do the local folks, the 1,002 folks that were surveyed, fall in terms of their answers.
All right. Lisa, what's going on with the Roxbury International Film Fest?
Well, we're just putting together the schedule. We'll be letting folks know, so we're curating it. It comes up in June, so we're hard at work on that.
Looking forward to it. On the Curiosity Desk, check out our YouTube channel. You can see our latest, our piece on City Hall monstrosity or masterpiece. We hear from a lot of folks, including a couple architects. Thank you today to the BPL technical and logistics crew, Glenn Heath, Sai Patel, Josh Polonsky, Maddie Geyer, Matthew Glover, Eddie Hickey, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Isabella Karen, Carly Corcoran, and thanks to City Table, the Lennox Hotel, and of course the wonderful Newsfeed Cafe. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Jared Bowen will be back on Monday. Have a great and culture-filled weekend.
Where's Mary? Where is she? Where is she? She's just about to close up the library.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's art and culture programming.
GBH's All Things Considered